Chapter 57-45. Above this piece of sand, there were scattered spatial barriers. These spatial barriers were irregular and did not seem to have been created by humans. But these spatial barriers only existed above the sand and did not seem to be formed naturally. Suddenly, Kong Shinmu noticed that these irregular spatial barriers were slowly moving. A thought suddenly occurred to him. This piece of sand had previously been a large forest, but it had been affected by the battle of experts and turned into sand. In other words, the aftermath of the battle of those experts had affected the space here and formed these spatial barriers. Kong Shinmu, could these spatial barriers have come from below? Emoya suddenly asked with a serious voice. Emoya had been paying attention to the changes in the sand since she had arrived here. Where the sand and the air met, spatial barriers would appear from time to time. Combined with the irregular spatial barriers above the sand, Emoya had such a speculation. It's possible. Emoya's words were like enlightenment. Kong Shinmu suddenly understood. The spatial layer below the sand was special. Kong Shinmu's soul consciousness could not dive too deep. This time, Kong Shinmu paid special attention to where the sand and air met and found that the spatial barriers were coming from below. Even though the speed was very slow, it was enough to confirm that these irregular spatial barriers floating above the sand were all coming from below. Since these spatial barriers could appear under the sand, it meant that there was an expert under the sand, or there was some unknown parallel space under the sand. Kong Shinmu was not curious about the unknown. He was always aware of the current situation, so he and Emoya circled around the sand and left. Not long after Kong Shinmu and Emoya left, the left protector also caught up. He saw the sand at a glance, and the spatial barriers that were slowly coming from the sand. A year ago, Wanzong had said that he would come here. At that time, this place was still a lush forest. When the left protector saw the sand, he was sure that Wanzong had gone there. The Wanzong that the left protector mentioned sounded strange, but for Kong Shinmu, he was not a stranger. He had even met him a few times. This Wanzong was the seemingly ordinary youth that Kong Shinmu had seen in the ancient desolate city. He was also Gu Tianzi's target this time. In the past year, the sealed mystic realm, which had been constantly moving, suddenly stopped at a certain point in time. The time that the sealed secret realm stayed in was very short. During this time, Wanzong had left the secret realm. Just when many cultivators in the sealed secret realm thought that the exit was about to open, the secret realm moved again. At the same time, Wanzong reappeared in the secret realm. When Wanzong came to the Great Forest, which was the present Sandyland, Gu Tianzi had the opportunity to capture Wanzong, but he was disturbed by Grasshopper, which ruined Gu Tianzi's plan. Moreover, Wanzong had taken away the inheritance power that Gu Tianzi had just obtained. Gu Tianzi was so angry that he chased her to the north and almost went to the northernmost territory. Although Gu Tianzi did not see clearly what the inheritance power that he had obtained was, he was basically sure that the inheritance power that existed in the sealed secret realm was most likely the power of the seal's inheritance. Which cultivator in Lai Feng's secret realm did not need Lai Feng's inheritance? Different from Gu Tianzi, the left protector had a good relationship with Wanzong. Wanzong! The left protector only shouted his name, and Wanzong sensed the left protector's existence. With Wanzong's help, Kong Shinmu would certainly not be able to escape. The left protector simply left the city and entered the sand. Walking to a certain place in the sand, the left protector's figure had already disappeared. At this time, Kong Shinmu and Emoya had already left the location of the sand. But the direction that the two were heading was the north, which was where Gu Tianzi was coming. "Senior, please wait." The closer they were to the north, the more Kong Shinmu noticed the abnormality of the space in the north. Moreover, there was an extremely obscure power that was rushing towards this side. At the same time, the space also followed layer by layer. There was a powerhouse displaying a space-type secret technique. The current Kong Shinmu was already very proficient in the use of the supreme power of space. Very soon, he noticed who the approaching person was. It was Gu Tianzi, who he had a few confrontations with in the ancient desolate city. When he first met Gu Tianzi, Kong Shinmu could not see through Gu Tianzi's chi meridians. After that, Kong Shinmu met Gu Tianzi again in General Lung Chonghong's battle formation. That should be the last time he saw Gu Tianzi. At that time, the battle formation trapped them, but Gu Tianzi was able to enter and exit calmly. Now that Kong Shinmu's supreme divine power had already had a qualitative breakthrough, He saw the reason why Gu Tianzi could freely enter and exit General Leng Changhong's battle formation at that time. At that time, Gu Tianzi displayed a spatial rampart. He cleverly used the characteristics of the spatial rampart, treating the spatial rampart as a kind of space secret technique, so as to achieve the purpose of speeding up his journey. From a certain perspective, this principle had certain similarities with the myriad manifestations origin superimposition technique. Both were through compressing space, thereby shortening the distance to the destination. Senior, it's that person. When Kong Xinmu sensed Gu Tianzi's aura, Emoya also sensed it. The two decisively chose a new direction. To them, Gu Tianzi's identity was unknown. In this kind of mystic realm, there were only two camps of cultivators. They were either friends or enemies. Kong Xinmu released the supreme power of space and left together with Emoya. Gu Tianzi's speed was not slow, but he always thought that Kong Xinmu could not achieve anything big, so he did not take it to heart. It was to the extent that when he rushed over, he discovered that Kong Xinmu and Emoya had already disappeared. There was not even any aura of the two people left in the surrounding space. There was still some feeling just now, but in just a breath's time, the two people's aura had already disappeared. Kong Xinmu, what's ahead? Emoya sensed the air movement in front, as well as the aura floating in the space, and asked. I remember it's a river. Other than that, there are no special marks. Speaking of this, Kong Xinmu was also a little puzzled. Tang Xiaoyu clearly marked a river. When Kong Xinmu was looking at the map, Emoya had already swept to the riverside, sizing up the long river not far away. Kong Xinmu quickly followed. This river is the exit, right? Suddenly, Emoya said softly. Exit. Kong Xinmu was surprised when he heard this. Although Tang Xiaoyu had marked this river, no matter how he looked at it, it was just an ordinary river. And this may be the exit. Emoya responded. Senior, you mean this river can lead to the outside of the mystic realm? Kong Xinmu thought for a moment and asked. Chapter 57-46. Kong Xinmu looked at the river in front of him again. Compared to the other places around it, this river was just an ordinary river. Around the river, there was the aura of the secret realm floating in the air. There were also some scattered space barriers in some places. This was the first time that Kong Xinmu looked at the sealed secret realm seriously. At that time, he entered the secret realm purely by chance. After entering, he realized that his movement technique was limited in the secret realm. Now that he looked at it, he understood that the movement technique was affected by the space barriers in the space. In fact, there had always been all kinds of space barriers in this sealed secret realm. Compared to the surroundings, the river in front of him could not be any more ordinary. It was precisely because it was ordinary that a passage to the outside of the secret realm could be opened. Kong Xinmu finally understood what Emoya meant. Senior, please wait a moment. Kong Xinmu immediately exerted his supreme space force and opened a passage in the river. He was sure that this passage would lead to the outside of the secret realm. However, he could not be sure what was beyond this passage. It was most likely to be the outer region. The outer region was an unfamiliar place to them, but it was also a place that Kong Xinmu had to go to. The 8-god star plate was originally a magic item of the Wuji Pavilion in the outer region. The place that the 8-god star plate lacked was most likely in the outer region. Emoya stood at the side, her beautiful eyes fixed on Kong Xinmu and watched as Kong Xinmu opened the passage. Her eyes, which had always been cold, were now filled with some complicated emotions. Senior, you... Kong Xinmu was about to tell Emoya about the passage, but he saw that Emoya's expression was not good. He was a little confused. Kong Xinmu, you must take care of yourself on this trip. Emoya paused and said gently. As soon as she said that, Kong Xinmu's mind went blank for a short while. Then he recollected his thoughts. In fact, before entering the sealed secret realm, Kong Xinmu had expected that he would have to part ways with Senior Emoya one day. It was just that he wasn't sure when they would be parting, but he didn't expect it to be now. Senior as well. Kong Xinmu smiled. Goodbye. Emoya smiled gently. Goodbye. Kong Xinmu smiled as well. Actually, he still had something to say to Emoya, but when he saw Emoya's smile, he didn't know what to say for a moment. As soon as Emoya's voice fell, a circle of white ripples appeared around her body and her figure immediately disappeared. Kong Shinmu extended his hand, wanting to stop Amoya. His hand still missed. The white ripples quickly dissipated, leaving no trace in the air. Kong Shinmu laughed helplessly. From the looks of it, Amoya was much stronger than he had imagined. Amoya often mentioned that her cultivation technique was special. The origin of her cultivation technique must be related to where she was going this time. He didn't know why Amoya suddenly wanted to leave, but it was normal for her to part ways. All he could do was to keep getting stronger so that he could have a better reunion next time. Kong Shinmu entered the passageway. At the same time, Gu Tianzi rushed over. There was a very ordinary river here. Cultivators who entered the mystic realm, as long as they passed by here, would know about this. But no one would waste their energy on an ordinary river. Initially, only Tang Xiaoyu marked this river. He believed that this river led to the outside world and was considered the exit of the mystic realm. Gu Tianzi and the others had the same thought as Tang Xiaoyu, but Gu Tianzi didn't think so much at that time. At this time, thinking that Kong Shinmu might leave the mystic realm through this river, he hurried over. Sensing Kong Shinmu's aura entering the passageway, Gu Tianzi immediately cast a spell to stop Kong Shinmu. However, Gu Tianzi's spell seemed to have hit a wall and couldn't penetrate that layer of space. Space barrier? Gu Tianzi could only think of space barrier. Then, the left protector also rushed over. Since when did a space barrier appear here? Gu Tianzi's brows furrowed. He released his soul consciousness and probed the space around this river. This time, he was shocked again. The space barrier that he had sensed just now had disappeared. His soul consciousness could only sense the scattered space barrier that existed in the surrounding space. Did that kid Kong Shinmu enter here? The left protector came a step too late and didn't sense the space barrier that had existed at that moment. Gu Tianzi responded and rushed into the space in the river. At this time, Kong Shinmu had already left the mystic realm through the passageway. The space barrier that had stopped Gu Tianzi just now was not Kong Shinmu's power. It was the power that Amoya had left behind. When Amoya was taken away, she had sensed that Gu Tianzi was rushing over and left behind a space barrier. Because of the existence of Amoya's space barrier, Kong Shinmu had successfully left the mystic realm. After Kong Shinmu left the mystic realm, this river became unusual. Affected by Kong Shinmu's supreme power of space, space barriers started to gather above the river. Even the river water started to have space barriers. Because of this, it was obviously more difficult to leave the mystic realm through this river. Damn it! Gu Tianzi was forced to escape from the space barrier. Gu Tianzi found that he had underestimated Kong Shinmu's power once again. Kong Shinmu could leave the mystic realm through this river, but he couldn't. Something seems to be wrong in the far north territory. The left protector suddenly said. When you left the north, did you notice who went to the far north territory? Green grasshopper. Speaking of this, Gu Tianzi suddenly thought of a person. And that Wan Zong. Wan Zong? Isn't he on the other side of the desert? The left protector focused, puzzled. Who said that the person who caused the chaos in the far north territory must stay in the far north territory? Gu Tianzi said lightly. The left protector did not deny Gu Tianzi's words. Now, the facts were very clear. Something had happened in the far north territory. Something had happened in the far north territory, and even the entire mystic realm had changed. The sealed mystic realm began to collapse on a large scale. All the cultivators inside were swept into the shattered space. And the place that these shattered spaces led to was the outer territory. At first, the left protector only thought that something had happened in the far north territory and did not take it seriously. After all, capturing Kong Shinmu was more important. When the mystic realm collapsed, the left protector realized that something was wrong. Gu Tianzi's expression was extremely gloomy. The collapse of the sealed mystic realm could only mean that the power of the seal had been inherited by someone. In other words, the power of the seal already had an heir. An heir? Gu Tianzi gritted his teeth. Could it be Kong Shinmu? The left protector's guess was not unreasonable. The moment Kong Shinmu left the mystic realm collapsed. It was most likely that he had obtained the power of the seal's inheritance. Gu Tianzi's expression was frighteningly gloomy. I hope it's him. Chapter 57-47. Kong Shin-mu, who had been mentioned frequently, had just left the spatial passageway when he sensed a violent tremor in the space behind him. If he had not withdrawn his supreme spatial force in time, the abnormal fluctuations from the space would have definitely affected him. The exit of the passageway that Kong Shin-mu had opened from the river was slowly closing as Kong Shin-mu withdrew his supreme spatial force. However, just as Jiang Shenwu sensed an abnormal fluctuation coming from the secret realm behind him, the slowly closing passageway's exit stopped. Kong Shin-mu no longer cared about where he was at this moment. He tried his best to fly forward and put some distance between himself and the exit of the passageway. The moment Kong Shin-mu left the passageway, the exit of the passageway suddenly split open. At the same time, the shape of the secret plane appeared in Kong Shin-mu's field of vision. The originally sealed secret plane was a spatial secret plane. It was impossible to see the situation inside the secret plane from the outside. One could only enter the secret plane through some secret plane entrances. At this moment, Kong Shin-mu was outside the secret plane. He could still clearly see everything inside the secret plane. This was the first time Kong Shin-mu had seen such a phenomenon. He guessed that the secret plane might be collapsing. The collapse of the secret plane also meant that the space inside the secret plane would merge with the outside world. Otherwise, the space inside the secret plane would be transferred to another world. If the space inside the secret plane was transferred to another world, it meant that the door to another world would be opened. Being outside the secret plane, Kong Shin-mu could only roughly see the scene inside the secret plane. He could not see anything else clearly. After glancing at the secret plane one more time, Kong Shin-mu turned to leave. The moment he took a step forward, a black light swept out from the passageway that he had just left the secret plane. It flew straight towards Kong Shin-mu's back. Kong Shin-mu only felt an extremely cold aura attack him. He instinctively sealed his soul, sea of consciousness and chi meridians. That abnormally cold and gloomy aura suddenly disappeared the moment it touched Kong Shin-mu's back. Even with Kong Shin-mu's current abilities, he couldn't sense what kind of power it was or where it went. At this moment, Kong Shin-mu sensed that the 7 devouring devil sealing art had suddenly lit up. Unlike before, when the 7 devouring demon sealing art lit up, the engraving was white. This was completely different from the 7 devouring devil sealing art's black markings. The 7 devouring devil sealing art engraved with a white light that lasted for a moment before disappearing. When the white light completely disappeared, Kong Shin-mu once again saw a black light flash on the 7 devouring devil sealing art. At the same time, Feng Ling showed up. Feng Ling, who had disappeared for a period of time, reappeared. Kong Shin-mu, that power doesn't belong to you. You'd better not touch it. Feng Ling's voice reverberated in Kong Shin-mu's mind. Kong Shin-mu naturally understood that the power Feng Ling mentioned was the power that had suddenly intruded into his body and caused the 7 devouring devil sealing art engravings to light up. Kong Shin-mu was also very vigilant about the power that had suddenly intruded into his body. What made him a little relieved was that this power seemed to have been temporarily absorbed by the 7 devouring devil sealing art. Since that was the case, he wouldn't pay much attention to it. Compared to this, Kong Shin-mu was more interested in the source of this power. Feng Ling, did the secret domain collapse? Kong Shin-mu hesitated for a moment before asking. Yes, the sealed power of inheritance has an heir, so the secret domain collapsed. In other words, everything in the secret domain will be scattered in this world. Regarding the collapse of the secret domain, Feng Ling didn't hide anything. After saying that, Feng Ling's figure disappeared. From Feng Ling's words, Kong Shin-mu had a general understanding of the source of that power. It was most likely a part of Feng's power of inheritance. At this moment, Kong Shin-mu had many doubts in his mind. Was Feng Ling the spirit of the 7 devouring devil sealing art engravings? What was the relationship between him and the first owner of the 7 devouring devil sealing art? There was also the engravings of the 7 devouring devil sealing art. All along, when the engravings of the 7 devouring devil sealing art lit up, it appeared to be black. But after the 7 devouring devil sealing art engravings absorbed that mysterious power, when the engravings lit up, it actually appeared to be white. After the mysterious power in the secret domain entered Kong Shin-mu's body, the secret domain collapsed with a loud bang. Everything in the secret domain merged with the outside world. Kong Shin-mu was hit by this huge impact, and his figure fell into a nearby space rampart. With the protection of this layer of space rampart, Kong Shin-mu was not attacked by the powerful force produced by the collapse of the secret domain. In Kong Shin-mu's impression, The impact of the secret domain's collapse lasted for a long time. When the fluctuations outside the space rampart gradually subsided, Kong Shinmu left the space rampart. At this time, the place he was at was the place he didn't want to go the most, but sooner or later, he would go there. This place was the outer domain. Moreover, the place where Kong Shinmu was now happened to be outside the everlasting pavilion's mountain gate. When the spatial barrier dissipated, Jiang Shenwu was in a canyon. He skimmed through it for a while. He skimmed a little and came to a position at the foot of a mountain, just in time to see a stone tablet not far away. The stone tablet was engraved with the name Everlasting Pavilion. Looking up at the towering steps, he guessed that it must lead to the Everlasting Pavilion. Although Kong Shinmu wanted to find the base of the 8-god star plate as soon as possible, it was obviously not the time. He turned around and left without hesitation. The sealed secret domain had been in a moving state because the sealed power of inheritance existed in the secret domain. Now that the sealed power of inheritance had an heir, the sealed secret domain collapsed on a large scale. As early as a year ago, someone predicted that the sealed secret domain would move to the outer domain. As soon as the sealed secret domain entered the outer domain, it collapsed on a large scale. Everything in the space of the secret realm, including the cultivators in the secret realm, had basically been thrown out into the outer realm. These cultivators who were expelled because of the collapse of the secret domain included the Left Protector and others. Of course, when the Left Protector realized his current situation, he was also a little depressed. He was expelled from the secret domain, but his city was gone. He had already searched around the vicinity, but he still couldn't find the city. Instead, he saw Kong Shinmu. Kong Shinmu. When the Left Protector saw Kong Shinmu, he also noticed that this was the Everlasting Pavilion. How dare you appear here? The Left Protector smiled sinisterly. Anyway, he couldn't find the city in a short time, so he might as well take down Kong Shinmu first. If you can appear here, why can't I? Kong Shinmu sized up the situation in front of him. He could clearly see the Left Protector's supreme divine power cultivation. They were both in the 9th level, and he had come into contact with the supreme 5 elements power before. Hand over the star map lock. Chapter 5748. A gust of wind blew past, and a giant object landed on the side. It was Ao Tong's puppet, the blood mantis. Seeing the blood mantis, Kong Shinmu was slightly surprised. He and Moya had entered the sealed secret realm by chance, and the blood mantis was sucked into the secret realm as well. Too many things had happened in the secret realm, and there had been no trace of the blood mantis. He never thought that the blood mantis would be in the hands of the Left Protector. Your method of refining the heart-devouring blood mantis is not bad. The Left Protector had already fought with the blood mantis before this. When they met the blood mantis had no consciousness and attacked anyone it saw. Speaking of which, the Left Protector had spent a lot of effort to suppress the blood mantis and temporarily control it. Although he had temporarily controlled the blood centipede, he had not taken control of it. The blood centipede would eventually lose control. The Left Protector found the imprint left by Kong Shinmu on the blood mantis, confirming that the owner of the blood mantis was Kong Shinmu. Originally, the Left Protector wanted to erase the puppet imprint, but this blood mantis was different from the other heart-devouring blood mantis. Only by killing the blood mantis owner could the puppet imprint be removed. The Left Protector only found the imprint on the blood mantis, but he was unfamiliar with Kong Shinmu. He even suspected that Kong Shinmu wasn't from the outer region. Moreover, he had heard many stories about Jiang Shenwu in the process of searching for him. He was very surprised by these stories that had been passed down. He was merely a cultivator of the 5th level of the Supreme Divine Power Realm. What right did he have to provoke General Lung Chonghong? And provoke the everlasting pavilion of the outer region all by himself? Now, the cultivation of Kong Shinmu that appeared in front of the Left Protector was different from the rumored cultivation. However, after reaching level 9 of Supreme Divine Power, Kong Shinmu could really do those things in the rumors. The Left Protector came personally to return my blood mantis. I should be grateful. Kong Shinmu looked at the blood mantis and smiled. Return? Kid, aren't you overestimating yourself? The Left Protector raised an eyebrow. With a wave of her hand, the blood mantis moved. Moreover, his target was Kong Shinmu. With the strength of Kong Shinmu's current soul consciousness, Refining the heart-devouring blood centipede was not a difficult task. Moreover, this heart-devouring blood centipede was his puppet. Kong Shin-mu released his soul consciousness, sweeping towards Blood-Maned. Blood-Maned, who had been charging straight at Kong Shin-mu, suddenly had his chi and blood surge, and his intimidating aura increased exponentially. Seeing this, the left protector sneered, killed by the blood puppet that he personally refined. This is the first time I've seen something like this. The left protector burst out laughing, and so did Kong Shin-mu. However, in the eyes of the left protector, Kong Shin-mu's smile was merely a bluff before his death. He had to admit that the heart-devouring blood centipede Kong Shin-mu had refined was strong. Although the blood centipede didn't have a consciousness, it obeyed its master. More importantly, this blood centipede had retained its unparalleled divine power. Without the control of this blood centipede, the left protector wasn't sure if this blood centipede's unparalleled divine power could improve. If this blood centipede's unparalleled divine power could improve like a normal cultivator's, then it would be a sharp weapon. The moment the blood centipede approached Kong Shin-mu, the left protector's pupils shrank. Immediately, he moved to the side, and the blood centipede's figure suddenly appeared where he had been standing. If he hadn't moved just now, the blood centipede's hand would have passed through his body. Everything had happened too suddenly, and the left protector was still frightened even now. Looking at Kong Shin-mu, there was no blood centipede in front of him. It was obvious that he was standing alone. His expression was calm, as if everything that had happened just now had nothing to do with him. After all, this blood centipede was Kong Shin-mu's heart-devouring blood centipede. Even if the left protector had temporarily controlled the blood centipede still obeyed Kong Shin-mu. Not to mention the current Kong Shin-mu, even the Kong Shin-mu from a year ago could easily take control of the blood centipede. The blood centipede's punch missed, but it didn't stop. Instead, it turned and aimed at the left protector. Moreover, when the blood centipede punched, its figure disappeared. The left protector was familiar with this scene. What shocked him was that he could still predict the blood centipede's movements at that time. After all, the blood centipede's speed was so fast that it gave people the illusion that it disappeared into thin air. Therefore, he could accurately predict where it would land next. The blood centipede's current strength was different from before. When its figure disappeared, it wasn't because it was fast or because it used some secret space technique. Instead, it directly penetrated through space and skimmed through it. To a certain extent, this kind of technique was also a kind of manifestation origin stacking technique. The left protector, who knew the blood centipede's strength well, didn't dare to let down his guard in the face of the blood centipede's attack. It was also at this time that the left protector completely understood the blood centipede's true strength. He had encountered the heart-devouring blood centipede before, so he had a certain understanding of puppets like the blood centipede. It was the first time he had seen a puppet's combat strength increase along with its master. He had never even heard of such a thing. The left protector could naturally guess that the blood centipede's combat strength had suddenly increased because Kong Shin-mu had regained control. Because of Kong Shin-mu, the blood centipede entangled the left protector. The left protector couldn't get away for a while. In fact, it was the first time Kong Shin-mu had discovered such a thing. Logically speaking, after the heart-devouring blood centipede was refined, its combat strength should be fixed at a certain level. However, when he regained control of the blood centipede, he discovered that its combat strength had increased by a level. Moreover, its own supreme divine power had suddenly increased. Kong Shin-mu speculated that the reason why the blood centipede's combat strength had increased might be related to covering the mark. Covering the original mark with a new mark was equivalent to refining a puppet again, and the puppet's combat strength would increase. Seeing that the blood centipede could fight with the left protector and was not at a disadvantage at all, Kong Shin-mu couldn't help but be surprised. Since the blood centipede's mark was covered, its combat strength would increase. Then, would the method to increase the puppet's supreme divine power be the same? Of course, this was only Kong Shin-mu's guess. Whether this method could increase the blood centipede's supreme divine power or not had yet to be tested. This was the territory of the Everlasting Pavilion. The fluctuations caused by the battle between the left protector and the blood centipede naturally attracted the attention of the people of the Everlasting Pavilion. The Great Elder of the Everlasting Pavilion had appeared. The Great Elder of the Everlasting Pavilion, Nangong-yi, was one of the direct bloodline successors of the Nangong family. Nangong-yi had already calculated that the sealed secret realm would come to the outer territory during this period of time, but he wasn't very clear about the specific day it would descend. Just a quarter of an hour ago, he sensed the changes in the outer territory space and went out to check. This time, Nangong-yi returned from outside, not from the everlasting pavilion. Chapter 57-49. Kong Shin-mu kept the blood mantis, but the left protector didn't know. In the left protector's knowledge, the blood mantis was elusive. At this moment, he only thought that the puppet was about to launch its next attack. Therefore, even though the blood mantis was gone, the left protector was still nervous. Nangong-yi saw Kong Shin-mu and the left protector as soon as he came over. "I didn't know that two distinguished guests were coming, please come in." Those who came were guests. Nangong-yi warmly invited Kong Shin-mu and the left protector to go to Wuji Pavilion. Nangong-yi. The left protector glanced at Kong Shin-mu and then at Nangong-yi. Only then did he know that it was Kong Shin-mu who kept the blood mantis. "Oh, it's the left protector." The left protector walked over. Nangong-yi recognized the left protector based on his identity card. Wuji Pavilion was also a member of the United Union. Since the United Union's headquarters came to visit in person, Wuji Pavilion would definitely welcome them. "This must be your good friend, right?" Nangong-yi said. "Yes." The left protector answered first. Kong Shin-mu frowned. Was this guy trying to trick him into going to Wuji Pavilion? "You're dead." The left protector looked at Kong Shin-mu's eyes and a cold light flashed in his squinted eyes. "You can call him Kong Shin-mu." The left protector said word by word in a low voice. "Young Master Jiang, sorry for not going out to meet you." Nangong-yi smiled heartily. "Elder Nangong is too polite." Kong Shin-mu smiled and cupped his fists. Although he had to go to Wuji Pavilion to find the whereabouts of the 8-god star plate sooner or later, it was obviously not the right time. Wouldn't it be courting death to barge in rashly? "Please come in." Nangong-yi invited Kong Shin-mu and the left protector again. "Elder Nangong, I still have something to deal with. It's not convenient for me to come today." Kong Shin-mu said politely. "Brother Jiang, what's so important about you? Since you're here today, let's go to the Wuji Pavilion together." The left protector walked to Kong Shin-mu's side and patted Kong Shin-mu's shoulder. He was certain that Kong Shin-mu would definitely not make a move at this time, but he did not expect that when he patted Kong Shin-mu's shoulder, he felt an extremely cold aura suddenly sweep into his palm. This aura appeared very suddenly and disappeared just as quickly. By the time the left protector sensed it, the aura had already entered his palm. Even so, he still had to appear extremely calm in front of Nangong-yi. "The two of you have come from afar. How could I not welcome you with closed doors?" Nangong-yi smiled faintly. "Young Master Jiang, please do not feel restrained. Elder Nangong's words are too serious. I really have something urgent to do, so please excuse me." Kong Shin-mu's expression was calm, and his words were well controlled. Seeing that his trick was useless, the left protector was about to make a move, but he suddenly met Kong Shin-mu's gaze. That pair of slightly narrowed eyes contained a bloodthirsty killing intent. The corners of his lips curled into a faint smile, full of warning. At the same time, the left protector felt the blood in his body suddenly surge. As his blood surged violently, there seemed to be a cold aura flowing through his meridians, entering his soul, consciousness, and sea of consciousness. This process happened in less than a breath's time, and the left protector did not have time to react at all. When the left protector sensed that a strange aura from Kong Shin-mu's body had entered his body, he had already prepared a plan to deal with it. He condensed his own strength and sealed his meridians, soul, consciousness, and sea of consciousness. However, this did not prevent the sudden energy from invading his body. "Then I'll take my leave first," Kong Shin-mu politely said to Nangong-yi, took a deep look at the left protector, and turned to leave. Since he was already in the outer region, he had to properly understand the distribution of forces in the outer region, especially the 4 great sects in the outer region. Other than the Everlasting Pavilion, which he already had an enmity with, there was also the Heaven Yuan Palace, the Cloud Sect, and the Qing Sect. Through Tang Xiaoyu, he had a rough understanding of the Heaven Yuan Palace. As for the Cloud Sect and the Qing Sect, they were 2 completely unfamiliar sections. The left protector watched helplessly as Jiang Shenwu left. There was nothing she could do. If he told Nangong Yi about Kong Shinmu's situation now, he would not believe him for a while. The worst thing was the aura left behind by Kong Shinmu. As long as that aura remained in his body, the hidden danger would always exist. The left protector regretted his actions back then. They were all supreme cultivators, and they were about to step into the gate of law. How could they enter the secret realm without any special methods? They actually thought that Kong Shinmu would obediently follow them to the everlasting pavilion. Left protector, what's wrong with you? Nangong Yi saw that the left protector's expression was a little bad and asked. Nothing. Let's go back first. The left protector was a little annoyed. He did not know if it was an illusion, but he felt that his soul consciousness was being disturbed. He had to expel the power of Kong Shinmu as soon as possible. After leaving the everlasting pavilion, Kong Shinmu headed straight for the nearby city. The collapse of the sealed secret realm did not have much impact on the outer region. However, after the secret realm collapsed, many cultivators in the secret realm came to the outer region. Kong Shinmu chose this city because it was closer and looked more prosperous. He wanted to understand the situation in the outer region. He did not expect to meet familiar faces here. They were a few cultivators who did not have the same uniform, but the pattern on their clothes was the same. The pattern looked like flowing water, but also like a flame. It was not very clear. Kong Shinmu had seen them in the city near the desolate ancient city. First of all, excluding the everlasting pavilion and the Heaven Yuan Palace, he did not know if they were from the Shao Yun sect and the Qing sect. Hey, isn't this Kong Shinmu? The person that Kong Shinmu could not call out Kong Shinmu's name. The few of them looked around and saw that only Kong Shinmu was there. They could not help but be puzzled. Are you really an itinerant cultivator? What else? Kong Shinmu glanced at the few of them and said calmly. Hearing that Kong Shinmu admitted it, the few of them exchanged glances and directly attacked Kong Shinmu. The speed of his attack was quite fast. As soon as he made his move, he immediately trapped Jiang Shenwu in the formation. Although the array formation did not look strong, its structure was very exquisite. It was a spatial array formation. Hand over the star map lock. After the few of them trapped Kong Shinmu, they released their supreme divine power and occupied the space around Kong Shinmu. The purpose of doing this was, of course, to prevent Kong Shinmu from using some kind of spatial technique to escape from the spatial array formation. Kong Shinmu could not deny that their starting point was right, but the fact was that they did not have any effect at all. Kong Shinmu could still use the supreme spatial power to leave the spatial array formation. The reason why he did not leave immediately was that he could see that these people were from the outer region and wanted to ask them some questions. Stop pretending to fool us. Everyone knows that you took away the star map lock. The few cultivators saw that Kong Shinmu was still silent and said. Their words and actions were full of vigilance against Kong Shinmu. How are you so sure that I am Kong Shinmu? Kong Shinmu was a little curious. There were many rumors about him in the sealed secret realm, but the version that was circulated was that he seemed to be an old and ugly cultivator. Look at this. Chapter 5750. An image of a person quickly emerged from the jade slip. In the image, Kong Shinmu was holding the 8-god star plate with a dignified look on his face. It was the scene of the battle with General Leng Chonghong in the ancient desolation ancient city. Kong Shinmu was puzzled. If he remembered correctly, he was in the battle formation at that time. The person who made this image should be able to easily enter and exit the battle formation. Suddenly, Kong Shinmu thought of Gu Tianzi and Grasshopper. At that time, under the cover of the battle formation's battlefield domain, Kong Shinmu saw with his own eyes that these two people could come and go freely in the battle formation. Thinking of the scene at that time, Kong Shinmu's expression became solemn. In addition to Gu Tianzi and Grasshopper, there was another person. The person that Kong Shinmu was afraid of was Wan Zong. However, the next moment, Kong Shinmu noticed the words on the jade slip. He had seen the same words on the jade slip in Tang Xiaoyu's possession. It should be the symbol of Tianyuan Palace. Where did you get this jade slip? Kong Shinmu asked casually. I got it from the hands of the wanted criminal of Tianyuan Palace. A person who looked very honest said. As soon as he finished speaking, he was patted on the head. What are you afraid of? Everyone knows that he is a wanted criminal. Stealing from him, No one will speak up for him, right? This time, Kong Shinmu understood that this jade slip was stolen from Tang Xiaoyu by this group of people. Hurry up and hand over the star map lock. Seeing that Kong Shinmu had been dawdling for a long time and still refused to hand over the star map lock, several people urged him again. Before you ask for the star map lock, don't you have to tell me who you are? You can't let the star map lock fall into the hands of a nobody, right? Kong Shinmu's tone was a little innocent, but also a little self-deprecating. Kong Shinmu, although you are a rogue cultivator, you are not a nobody. You are famous now. Everyone knows what you did in Ancient Desolation Ancient City. Someone said. There's also the matter of you killing Unit Fei from the Everlasting Pavilion. Through his understanding, Kong Shinmu found out that this group of people were not itinerant cultivators from the outer regions, nor were they from small sections. Instead, they were disciples of the Cloud Sky sect, one of the 4 great sections. Furthermore, he was a disciple of the Fire sect, one of the 5 sects of the Cloud sect. The Cloud Sky sect was divided by the 5 elements, and there were a total of 5 sections. Every one of them would cultivate the corresponding Supreme God power, and then comprehend the corresponding Supreme God power domain. In other words, all the disciples of the 5 sects of the Cloud Sky sect had grasped the corresponding Supreme Divine power. Even these few people had the domain power of a 6th-level Supreme Divine power. This was something that Kong Shinmu had not noticed. Although they were part of the 4 great sects, the 4 great sects did not get along with each other. Moreover, the 4 great sects on the surface did not represent the overall strength of the outer realm. On the contrary, the strongest cultivators in the outer realm were the 10 rogue cultivators. These 10 people did not join any sects, nor did they attach themselves to any clan. They had always been independent. In fact, even the 10 of them did not meet each other. The outer realm sounded like a secret realm, but in fact, it was a cultivation world. Because these 10 powerful cultivators kept a low profile, even if one encountered them, one would not be able to recognize them. They were like the most ordinary people, living the most ordinary life. Of course, even though the 10 of them kept a low profile, they still had their own status symbols. This was because the existence of the 10 of them concerned the balance of the entire outer realm. Apart from these 10 cultivators, there were other powerful cultivators who were distributed among various sects or clans. Therefore, the so-called 4 great sects were just a form of address for the outside world. Moreover, among the 4 great sects, except for the Heavenly Yuan Palace, the other 3 were only members of the Allied Alliance. The Allied Alliance was the overlord of the Nightmare region. How should one describe the Nightmare region? To put it simply, if the outer realm was compared to the front of the world, then the Nightmare region would be the back of the world. That wasn't accurate either. The Nightmare region might be equivalent to several outer realm realms. Wait, there's something wrong. Suddenly, one of them said. Our Cloud sect seems to have withdrawn from the Alliance some time ago, and the Qing sect is also withdrawing from the Alliance. Why? Kong Shinmu asked curiously. If you want to withdraw from the Alliance, then so be it. Why are there so many whys? You, on the other hand, you're clearly not someone from the outer realm, and you're heading there alone. How can you be so arrogant? Not only did these people not answer Kong Shinmu's question, but they also criticized Kong Shinmu. Hurry up and hand over the star map lock. They had just escaped from the collapsed secret realm. As the saying goes, one who survives a great disaster is bound to have good fortune later on. Look, they met Kong Shinmu, who had the star map lock. As long as they obtained the Star Atlas lock, they would become legends of the Shaoyun sect. During this period of time, Kong Shinmu had been listening to these people talk about the outer realm while secretly cracking the spatial array formation they had set up. Its structure was somewhat similar to the manifestation origin superposition technique, but it had a fixed array base. Presumably, all the spatial array formations they had set up used the same array base. Different spells could be used on the same formation base, thereby creating all kinds of formations. What if I don't hand it over? Kong Shinmu raised his eyebrows. Hey, you're really arrogant. When we were in the secret realm, I only heard that you cruelly killed Hai Fan from the Everlasting Pavilion, took his Star Devourer, and shamelessly erased Hai Fan's contract mark and imprinted your own. At that time, I was still wondering how powerful a person could be to challenge the Everlasting Pavilion. Now it seems that you're quite arrogant. Let me tell you, if you don't hand it over today, The people from the everlasting pavilion will immediately take your life tomorrow. This group of people did not just talk, they had also strengthened their power, completely sealing off the space within a radius of several miles around Jiang Shenwu. If Kong Shinmu hadn't broken through to the 9th level of Supreme Divine Power and mastered Supreme Spatial Power, he might really have been trapped. In fact, he had the ability to easily break through this layer of restrictions. In just the blink of an eye, Kong Shinmu broke through the spatial restrictions imposed by this group of people. This scene shocked the few people in front of him. It was precisely because they knew that Kong Shinmu had some tricks up his sleeve that they had trapped Kong Shinmu the moment they saw Kong Shinmu. However, they had never thought that Kong Shinmu would be able to easily break through these layers of restrictions. After all, these people were disciples of the Flame Sect of the Cloud Sky Sect. Although they were shocked by the strength that Kong Shinmu had displayed, they wouldn't show any weakness. They tried their best to release their strongest Supreme Divine Power, as well as the corresponding Supreme Divine Power, in an attempt to trap Kong Shinmu again. Kong Shinmu had to admit that these people were very strong. If he had met them a year ago, he would definitely have been in a tough battle. However, his current strength was not the same as before, and he easily knocked them down. We know our mistake. Senior, please be magnanimous and spare us. After being knocked down by Kong Shinmu, they immediately begged for mercy. We have some information about the everlasting pavilion here. We hope that it can help you, Senior. Chapter 57-51. After getting the information he wanted, Kong Shinmu let them go. They had just arrived at the outer region, so there was no reason for them to provoke the Cloud Sect. After all, he had just arrived, and he had already offended the Wuji Pavilion. Offending the Cloud Sect was undoubtedly an irrational move. The disciples of the Cloud Sect knew that they had underestimated Kong Shinmu's true strength. Fortunately, Kong Shinmu kept his word and let them go. They didn't stay for long and left as soon as possible. Kong Shinmu roughly organized the current situation of the Wuji Pavilion. The sect master of the Wuji Pavilion had gone out to travel and hadn't returned yet. But now, there were guests from the Alliance visiting the Wuji Pavilion. The guest of the Alliance in the Wuji Pavilion was not the Left Protector, but someone else. In short, it wasn't the time to go to the Wuji Pavilion. Kong Shinmu entered the city. He wanted to first understand the Supreme Divine Power, as well as the Supreme Divine Power related to it. Emoya wouldn't leave for no reason. She must have been guided to leave. Kong Shinmu really wanted to know where Emoya had gone. Was she in the outer region, the Nightmare region, or somewhere else? In fact, Kong Shinmu had already sensed that this day would come when he entered the Sealed Secret Realm. After thinking about all the cultivators he had met in the Sealed Secret Realm, Kong Shinmu had a general direction. Emoya was most likely in the Nightmare region. He had heard about the Nightmare region many times, but he didn't know much about it yet. The city was very lively. Many cultivators who had come out of the Sealed Secret Realm also gathered here. Their purpose was similar to Kong Shinmu's. They mostly wanted to learn about the outer region. In other words, most of the cultivators who gathered in the city weren't from the outer region. Kong Shinmu was confused about this. Speaking of which, he had also come across the Sealed Secret Realm by chance. At that time, he had only thought that he had been lucky enough to run into the opening of the Secret Realm. Now that he thought about it carefully, from the moment he and Emoya encountered the Sealed Mystic Realm, the entrance to the Sealed Mystic Realm had always been open. The power released from the Mystic Realm was only a part of the Mystic Realm's power. At that time, Gu Tianzi, Qing Fu, and the others had also entered the Secret Realm. Coincidentally, most of the people who entered the Mystic Realm at that time were cultivators from other realms. It was said that the Sealed Mystic Realm was a moving Mystic Realm. In other words, when the Mystic Realm's entrance first opened, these cultivators had already entered the Mystic Realm. Then, when the Sealed Secret Realm first opened, it definitely wasn't in the outer realms. That was where the cultivators were inquiring about. Kong Shinmu sat in a tea house like an ordinary cultivator, listening to the discussions of the surrounding cultivators. The owner of the tea house, or perhaps a local, was telling them about the outer realms. Among them, Kong Shinmu heard the most about the otherworld. The otherworld was the word that Kong Shinmu was most familiar with. In his 8-god star plate, he had signed contracts with 5 beings from the otherworld, so he could summon them to any space he wanted at any time. Why did these cultivators keep mentioning the other world? There's a boundary between the other world and the outer realms? Someone couldn't help but exclaim. The person who spoke was a middle-aged man dressed in a linen robe. The aura of supreme divine power that leaked from him was actually the power of supreme divine fire. Moreover, this person's realm of supreme divine fire had already reached the 8th level. When Kong Shinmu first heard the words, the other world, it was also this middle-aged man who had first mentioned it. Thus, he paid more attention to him and sized him up. He was a human. Were there humans in the other world as well? As soon as he had this question, Kong Shinmu quickly overturned it. What kind of place was the other world? Apart from the famous 4 corpse progenitor clans, what other existences were there? Naturally, no one answered these questions. However, Kong Shinmu faintly felt that his understanding of the other world was very one-sided. It was very likely that the 4 corpse progenitor clans were only the tip of the iceberg. Xueqi, don't you have the clan's teleportation talisman? See if you can use it. Someone at the side asked the middle-aged man in linen robes. I've already used it when I left the secret realm, but there was no reaction. The clan probably hasn't received the transmission. Xueqi frowned. Before coming to Feng's secret realm, no one expected that Feng's secret realm would actually collapse. Some said that Feng's inheritance had found an inheritor, so the secret realm collapsed. Someone else chimed in. Feng's inheritance? Feng isn't dead, so how could he have the inheritance? Xueqi spoke with bewilderment. How could Feng not be dead? He was the first cultivator to study the 7 devouring devil sealing technique, yet it was reduced to fragments later on. How could he still be alive? I don't know. The sounds of discussion in the surroundings were very chaotic. In the end, Xueqi also believed that Feng was dead. Kong Shinmu wasn't sure whether Feng was still alive or not. However, he had a feeling that once the 7 devouring devil sealing technique was completed, all his questions would be answered. As for now, it was obviously not the time to be concerned about these things. He was basically sure that most of the cultivators in this tea house, including Xueqi, were from the other world. The outer realm and the other world were separated by a world boundary, and it was a chasm that couldn't be crossed by any teleportation talisman or spatial energy. When they headed to Feng's secret realm, they naturally knew that Feng's secret realm was always in a moving state. Even though Feng's secret realm was always in a moving state, it was only periodically. During the process of moving, the secret realm would circle back to the place where it first appeared, which was the other world. When the entrance to Feng's secret realm was first opened, it was the other world. Now, Kong Shinmu roughly understood why Cruel suddenly helped him that time. At the current stage, Feng's secret realm had completely collapsed, and it was something that all the cultivators in the secret realm hadn't expected. Forget about the cultivators in the outer realm, they went home directly. As for the cultivators in the other world, they could basically only stay in the outer realm. Kong Shinmu stood up and left the tea house after he had more or less understood the situation. Even though the cultivators in the tea house were basically from the other world, they didn't know each other well. Nobody knew what secret weapons the other party was hiding. Xueqi was talking to someone when he suddenly sensed the movement of the corpse talisman. The corpse talisman was a sensing Dharma tool of his clan, and it could identify some high-level Dharma tools. Of course, it could also accurately sense the Dharma tools in the other world. At this moment, Xueqi sensed the whereabouts of the bipolar mirror. Actually, he didn't sense the bipolar mirror, but the corpse talisman indicated that it was the bipolar mirror. Chapter 57-52. Xueqi followed Kong Shinmu's footsteps, and Kong Shinmu stopped when he noticed Xueqi following him. Cultivators had always been straightforward and straightforward. When Kong Shinmu saw Xueqi following him, he knew that Xueqi had something to discuss with him. Young brother, I wonder if you know of the bipolar mirror? Xueqi naturally noticed Kong Shinmu's intentions, and he took a step forward while maintaining a safe distance from Kong Shinmu before he asked. I've never heard of it. Kong Shinmu had indeed never heard of the bipolar mirror. Perhaps it was a summoning magic tool like the 8-God Star Disc, or perhaps he'd encountered it in the past. However, he was very sure that he didn't possess the bipolar mirror. The bipolar mirror can open up the boundaries of the world, and it's slightly similar to the Star Atlas lock. However, it's more limited than the Star Atlas Lock as it can only open up the boundaries of the world. It can be considered to be an extremely formidable teleportation talisman. Xueqi glanced deeply at Kong Shinmu as he spoke like this. As soon as he spoke like this, Kong Shinmu came to an understanding. But in his memory, he really hadn't encountered the bipolar mirror. Kong Shinmu naturally knew that Xueqi was looking for a way to return to the other world. I wonder if the Star Atlas Lock can open up the boundaries of the world? Kong Shinmu hesitated for a moment before he asked. It can't. Xueqi shook his head with an extremely solemn expression. Even though both of them are spatial magic tools, the Star Atlas Lock is unable to open up the boundaries of the world, and it can only teleport at will within the scope of the same parallel world. These words allowed Kong Shinmu to understand the function of the Star Atlas Lock. When he first heard of the existence of the Star Atlas Lock, it was Senior Moya who told him that it could store the blood puppets. Later on, he went to look for the Star Atlas Lock to store the blood puppets. Obtaining the Dermic Seal and the power of Dermic Might was just a coincidence. Up until now, he hadn't truly utilized the Star Atlas Lock. The function of the Star Atlas Lock had always been hearsay. Xueqi's explanation allowed Kong Shinmu to completely realize that the other world and the world he lived in didn't belong to the same world, and they were two completely different worlds. Since they were two different worlds, then all the questions in the other world could be answered. If the other world was also an independent world, it definitely wouldn't just have existences like the four great corpse ancestor clans. Presumably, the ancient spirits and the other races were only a small part of that world. Xueqi was a member of a clan in the other dimension. I'm sorry, I don't know what the bipolar mirror is. Kong Shinmu said honestly. When he noticed that Kong Shinmu didn't seem to be lying, Xueqi spoke of the bewilderment in his heart. The corpse talisman I have is a Dharma treasure that can sense Dharma treasures. Just now, the corpse talisman sensed the existence of the bipolar mirror, so I thought you had it. In the beginning, Xueqi had only wanted to return to the other side. When he noticed that Kong Shinmu had the bipolar mirror, he intended to sincerely exchange for the opportunity to use it. Xueqi could sense that Kong Shinmu's cultivation base was far stronger than his. There was even one thing that made Xueqi inexplicably feel respect for Kong Shinmu. No matter what, the Supreme Divine Flame that he possessed was at least at the 8th level, and the Supreme Divine Flame domain had even reached the 8th level. However, for some reason, such a powerful Supreme Divine Power suddenly fell silent when it reached Jiang Shenwu's hands. It seemed to have encountered some kind of restraining force, and the Supreme Divine Flame automatically returned to his Qi meridians. This could only mean that Kong Shinmu also possessed the Supreme Divine Flame, and the level or grade of the Supreme Divine Flame far surpassed the Supreme Divine Flame. Xueqi wasn't wrong. Kong Shinmu originally cultivated the Supreme Divine Flame as well, and it attained the 9th level later on. When it reached the 9th level, the Supreme Godly Fire devoured the flame of the undead and evolved into the Supreme Godly Spirit Flame. The Supreme Divine Spirit Flame was above all other flames in the world. It wasn't exaggerated at all to say that the Supreme Divine Flame was the king of all flames in the world. Can you tell me what the bipolar mirror looks like? Kong Shinmu paused for a moment before he asked. Kong Shinmu wasn't afraid that Xueqi would suddenly attack him. Not to mention that he was from the other side, and he was a stranger in the outer realm. She couldn't help but be curious when he heard that the bipolar mirror was so formidable. Let's leave the city first. Xueqi looked at the surroundings and spoke in a low voice. Kong Shinmu understood. Even though this street was bustling with people coming and going, all of them had their own thoughts in their hearts. As Xueqi and Kong Shinmu spoke, they'd drawn the attention of some people. Especially some people from the other side. They were extremely curious towards Kong Shinmu's identity when they saw Xueqi getting close to a person of unknown origins. Numerous cultivators from the sealed secret realm were gathered in the city, and there was no lack of people from the other side that had heard of some of Kong Shinmu's deeds. At this moment, they noticed Kong Shinmu, and they couldn't help but come over. Kong Shinmu. Someone directly shouted out Kong Shinmu's name. Xueqi had heard of Kong Shinmu's name, yet he'd never seen Kong Shinmu himself. Only now did he realize that this person by his side was actually Kong Shinmu, and he felt a wave of surprise. He'd always thought that Kong Shinmu who'd turned the sealed secret realm upside down would seem to be a cultivator with great experience, Yet he'd never imagined that Kong Shinmu himself would actually be so young. Kong Shinmu noticed Xueqi's reaction and expression, and he smiled lightly. Xueqi didn't shrink back just because his little brother was Kong Shinmu, and he continued to follow Kong Shinmu out of the city. There were rules within the city, and when these cultivators from outside the city recognized Kong Shinmu, they didn't dare do anything to Kong Shinmu. After they left the city, they didn't have so many worries. Anyone who'd heard of Kong Shinmu's deeds was basically aware that Kong Shinmu possessed the star diagram lock, and he even possessed the fragment of the 7 devouring devil sealing technique. Supposedly, he possessed 2 fragments of the 7 devouring devil sealing technique at the same time. Xueqi, no wonder you were being secretive earlier. So it turns out that you know Kong Shinmu. As soon as they left the city, all the cultivators that came out from the secret realm converged over, and they surrounded Kong Shinmu and Xueqi. What do all of you want? Xueqi didn't avoid it at all. What do you think we have? At this moment, the cultivators that conversed with Xueqi earlier seemed as if they'd seen their prey when they saw Kong Shinmu. They were displeased by Xueqi's concealment. However, out of consideration for the clan that stood behind Xueqi, they didn't say anything. This group of people had already found out that Kong Shinmu was all alone this time. He wasn't from the outer realm, nor was he from the other dimension. Independent cultivators like this were the epitome of being easy to bully. All of you want the star diagram lock? Kong Shinmu stood there and glanced at all the cultivators present here before he spoke indifferently. If you're sensible, then hand over the star diagram lock as soon as possible. Everyone looked at Kong Shinmu with ridicule. Xueqi couldn't help but frown when he saw this. Little brother. Xueqi felt slightly guilty. These people were able to notice Kong Shinmu because he'd suddenly asked about the bipolar mirror. It's fine. Chapter 57-53. The cultivators that left the city formed an encirclement of their own accord, and they obstructed the path of Kong Shinmu and Xueqi. The formation outside the city was not small, and it attracted the attention of many people in the city. One by one, they gathered at the city gate. Hurry up and hand over the star map lock. When he saw more and more people had gathered here, the cultivator that surrounded Kong Shinmu and Xueqi at the beginning shouted right away. There are so many of you, but there is only one star atlas lock. Who do you want me to hand it over to? Kong Shinmu raised his eyebrows and said lightly. As soon as he said that, all the cultivators present fell silent for a moment. This is a serious question. Before they came here, they had already discussed that they would take down Kong Shinmu first before considering the distribution of the Star Atlas lock. But in fact, there was only one Star Atlas lock. Once Kong Shinmu was handed over, the conflict would escalate due to the uneven distribution. Because of Kong Shinmu's words, the crowd hesitated for a moment. Then one by one they started arguing. Everyone, don't listen to his nonsense. We have to at least see the Star Atlas lock before we consider this. Someone cried out. The Star Atlas lock is here. Kong Shinmu didn't avoid it and took out the Star Atlas lock. The eyes of all the cultivators present lit up when they saw the star map lock in Kong Shinmu's palm. Is that the star map lock? It was the first time Xueqi had seen a Star Atlas lock, and he felt a wave of surprise. But young brother, I'm afraid it's disadvantageous to you if you take it out rashly. Xueqi glanced at everyone present here and spoke in a low voice. That depends on whether they have the ability or not. Kong Shinmu's lips curled into a faint smile. In the eyes of all the cultivators, the star map lock was their target. Now that Kong Shinmu had revealed the Star Atlas lock, all of them couldn't restrain their greed any longer, and they flashed forward to press straight towards Kong Shinmu. As long as he could obtain the Star Atlas lock, he would do anything. There was also a group of cultivators who were very interested in the remnant of the 7 devouring devil sealing art that Kong Shinmu possessed, and they also dashed forward. Everyone rushed forward, but Kong Shinmu still stood there without moving. He didn't even have the intention to make a move. Xueqi felt apologetic in his heart, and he intended to make a move to stop these people. Although he couldn't defeat this group of people in one fell swoop, he could at least create an opportunity to escape. Kong Shinmu saw the greed in these people's eyes and opened the star map lock without hesitation. A black shadow rushed out of it. It was Blood Puppet. The moment Blood Mane appeared, he turned into a black shadow, quickly bypassing the crowd. What is it? It looks like a blood manta. Exclamations of surprise could be heard from the crowd. Then, the black shadow circled back and flew into the Star Atlas lock. Kong Shinmu put away the Star Atlas lock again. The cultivators that surrounded them suddenly fell one by one, and it was unknown whether they were dead or alive. Xueqi and Kong Shinmu stood relatively close, so they naturally saw what came out of the Star Atlas lock. It was a heart-devouring blood puppet. This heart-devouring blood puppet was very fast, and it was very strong. It suddenly swept away the numerous cultivators that were flashing towards Kong Shinmu. When the blood puppet returned to the Star Atlas lock, an extremely dense smell of blood suddenly spread out. Kong Shinmu didn't even look back as he left this place with large strides. Xueqi glanced at the numerous cultivators that had already lost their vitality on the ground, and he left swiftly as well. The people in the city who wanted to come out and join in the fun were extremely shocked when they saw this scene. On the way, Xueqi roughly told Kong Shinmu about the bipolar mirror. He also told him about the bipolar mirror. When he heard about the bipolar mirror, Kong Shinmu felt it was unfamiliar. However, when he saw the appearance of the bipolar mirror, Kong Shinmu couldn't help but be stunned. Why did this bipolar mirror look a little similar to the inscription of the 7 devouring demon sealing art? Is this the bipolar mirror? Kong Shinmu frowned and asked. It's the bipolar mirror. Xueqi was very certain. Kong Shinmu could see that Xueqi wasn't lying. It was precisely because of this that he was puzzled. The bipolar mirror was actually the inscription of the 7 devouring demon sealing art? In order to verify it, Kong Shinmu activated the inscription of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. When he first obtained the fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art, Kong Shinmu couldn't activate the inscription of the 7 devouring demon sealing art on his own. It was the inscription of the 7 devouring demon sealing art that activated on its own. After the battle with Leng Zhonghong, Kong Shinmu obtained 2 fragments of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. Along the way, he absorbed many laws and successfully allowed the inscription of the 7 devouring demon sealing art to reach the peak of the first level. Presently, Kong Shinmu was able to activate the inscription of the 7 devouring demon sealing art on his own. At the instant he activated the inscription of the 7 devouring demon sealing art, Kong Shinmu felt a wave of shock. The appearance of the bipolar mirror that Xueqi revealed was really exactly similar to the inscription of the 7 devouring demon sealing art. Right when Kong Shinmu was pondering about this, Xueqi felt a wave of shock in his heart as well. Just earlier, his corpse talisman displayed a display related to the bipolar mirror. Moreover, the corpse talisman displayed that Kong Shinmu possessed the bipolar mirror. Xueqi had asked Kong Shinmu earlier, and he discerned from Kong Shinmu's words that Kong Shinmu really didn't possess the bipolar mirror. But the reaction of the corpse talisman at this moment caused Xueqi to be completely unable to figure out the situation. Suddenly, Xueqi suddenly thought of a possibility. Kong Shinmu wasn't someone from the other world, whereas the bipolar mirror was a magic artifact that was born in the other world. Was there a possibility that Kong Shinmu had obtained the bipolar mirror by chance, yet he wasn't able to recognize that it was the bipolar mirror? Xueqi thought like this, and Kong Shinmu had already confirmed it. The inscription of the 7 devouring demon sealing art was the bipolar mirror that Xueqi spoke of. The bipolar mirror is an object of the other world. Then does that mean that the inscription of the 7 devouring demon sealing art is an object of the other world as well? The fragment of the 7 devouring demon sealing art and the inscription of the 7 devouring demon sealing art are 2 different things? This question caused Kong Shinmu to be troubled. Kong Shinmu suddenly recalled that not long ago, the spirit that claimed to be the 7 devouring demon sealing art, Fengling, used his own strength to summon the divine light to make an appearance. Now it was said that the inscription of the 7 devouring demon sealing art was the bipolar mirror. This couldn't help but cause Kong Shinmu to arouse suspicion towards Fengling's origins. You're saying that the bipolar mirror can open up the boundaries of the world? Asked Kong Shinmu in a low voice. Yes, only the bipolar mirror is capable of accomplishing that. Xueqi was extremely certain. Kong Shinmu hesitated for a moment before he asked. Then what about the 8-god star plate? The 8-god star plate? Xueqi spoke with surprise. Kong Shinmu's eyes narrowed slightly as he stared fixedly at Xueqi who stood before him. The 8-god star plate is similar to the bipolar mirror, but the nature of the 8-god star plate is an offensive magic artifact. Xueqi spoke like this. These words caused Kong Xinmu to be bewildered. The 8-god star plate he knew was a type of summoning magic artifact. Yet why has it actually become an offensive magic artifact in Xueqi's hands? The possessor of the 8-god star plate is able to form a contract with the 8-god star plate and summon a contracted being from any world to be his main offensive force. Xueqi paused for a moment before he spoke once more. Chapter 57-54. As for where the 8-god star disk first appeared, even I don't know. Xueqi frowned tightly and pondered for a moment. He seemed to have thought of something and added, "But that ancestor of the clan probably knows." Kong Xinmu silently committed all of this to memory. After he possessed the 8-god star disk, he was very clearly aware that the 8-god star disk lacked a foundation. It couldn't be considered to be the core of the disk, yet it was the most important part of the disk. He did not have the foundation of the 8-god star plate. He only knew from the current 8-god star plate that the 8-god star plate was a summoning artifact. According to Xueqi, the 8-god star disk is an offensive magic artifact. Perhaps it was related to the foundation of the disk. No matter what, even though the disk is capable of forming a contract with the living beings of another world and summoning them to assist its possessor, the door that the contracted living being passes through is called the door of contract. The gate that the contracted life form passes through is called the gate of contract. Only the contracted life form can pass through it, and no one else can. Xueqi let out a long sigh. Even if the 8-god star disk really was here and could open the door to the other world, he wouldn't be able to pass through it. If he wanted to return to the other world, then he could only rely on the bipolar mirror. The corpse talisman indicated that the bipolar mirror was in Kong Xinmu's possession, but it seemed like Kong Xinmu himself didn't know about the bipolar mirror. Presently, Xueqi's thoughts had fallen into a state of confusion. He didn't even know if the corpse talisman's senses had gone wrong, or if Kong Xinmu hadn't concealed anything from him. Actually, if Kong Xinmu intended to conceal something, then he really didn't have the qualifications to interrogate Kong Xinmu. The reason Kong Xinmu asked about the 8-god star disk was because he wanted to know if Xueqi could pass through the door to the other world that was opened by the disk. Now it would seem like Xueqi couldn't pass through that door. Xueqi seemed to be a member of a great clan in the other world, and he possessed a certain level of status and identity. It was obviously impossible for him to lower himself to be Kong Xinmu's contracted living being. So Kong Xinmu naturally didn't say anything. He was very interested in the bipolar mirror. He never expected that the 7 devouring devil sealing technique would actually be the bipolar mirror. Then, how could he activate the bipolar mirror? At this time, the 7 devouring devil sealing art was in a state of activation. Kong Xinmu carefully observed the slowly rotating 7 devouring devil sealing art engravings. From the looks of it, the 7 devouring devil sealing art really was like a mirror. The front was white and the back was black. It was like a double-sided mirror. It seemed reasonable to call it the bipolar mirror. Kong Xinmu attempted to carve the 7 devouring devil sealing art with his soul consciousness, attempting to open the so-called boundary of the world. Kong Xinmu concentrated his soul consciousness for a while, and finally saw the two sides of the 7 devouring devil sealing art gradually merge. It was as if an entrance had been opened, but it only lasted for less than a breath's time before disappearing. Is there no other way to go back? Kong Xinmu asked after a pause. It was possible that the mark of the 7 devouring devil sealing art was the bipolar mirror. However, to open the boundary of the world through the bipolar mirror, there were probably other methods or conditions that could not be opened in a short period of time. If I enter a secret realm that looks like the sealed secret realm again, I should be able to go back by moving the secret realm on its own. Xueqi's expression was bitter. Of course, I have to ensure that the secret realm will pass through the other world during its movement. This answer. Kong Xinmu concluded that under the current situation, there was no other way to return to the other world other than using the bipolar mirror to open the boundary of the world. Experts of laws like that should be able to open the passage to the other world, right? Kong Xinmu pondered for a moment and said. Due to the fact that the bipolar mirror was the mark of the 7 devouring devil sealing art and was a rather special existence, he could not directly say that he had the bipolar mirror. That's possible. Xueqi nodded. Then, little brother, I won't disturb you any longer. Farewell. Xueqi bid farewell to Kong Xinmu and planned to gather the people from the other world who were stranded outside the realm. When they went to the sealed secret realm, Xueqi was the first person in his family to enter the secret realm. Later on, there were others who followed him into the secret realm. The sealed secret realm was huge, but it could only maintain long-distance communication. This time, when the secret realm collapsed, they should be stranded outside the realm. In the process of gathering the other family members, he should also contact the 4 major sections. Kong Xinmu also left on his own. He wanted to go to the Heaven Origin Palace first. According to Tang Xiaoyu, a certain senior of the Dragon God clan had gone to the Heaven Origin Palace. In the outer realm, as long as the 4 major sects were mentioned, there was no one who did not know of them. It was just that the 4 major sects were very far away from each other. The place where Kong Xinmu was located was the closest to the Wuji Pavilion and the furthest from the Heaven Origin Palace. After finding out the location of the Heaven Origin Palace, Kong Xinmu went straight to the Heaven Origin Palace. As he moved forward, Kong Xinmu could vaguely sense a strange aura. Moreover, he did not know why, after the 7 devouring demon sealing art seal lit up, it did not close. Although he had already tried to close it, the 7 devouring demon sealing art seal did not close. At this time, Kong Xinmu had already arrived at a forest area. Looking at the road, the forest should extend endlessly. In short, the area it occupied was very large. There should be some demonic beasts living in it. It was only when Kong Xinmu walked a little closer that he discovered that the trees in this forest were very strange. Not only the trees, but even the flowers and plants growing on the ground were all strangely shaped. They were either 2 branches connected together or several branches joined together. There was also a layer of soil not far away from the forest, mixed with sand. This scene was like 2 huge jungles merging together. Suddenly, Kong Xinmu quivered. In other words, the forest in front of him was mixed with the forest in the sealed secret realm. Comparing the position of the forest and the sand, Kong Xinmu basically determined the location of the forest in the sealed secret realm. It was the sand that he and Senior Emoya had encountered before heading to the river. That piece of sand was originally a forest. Where the sand extended, there were trees. But because of the strange space barrier that constantly appeared under the sand, he did not intend to stay. At that time, because of some things, he left in a hurry and did not have time to check the forest not far from the sand. He did not think that he would encounter that forest again in the outer domain. Although there was still a distance from the forest, Kong Xinmu could still clearly sense the space barrier floating in the air. Just like in the secret realm, it was randomly born from the sand and floated in the air without any pattern. Kong Xinmu's expression suddenly froze. He retracted his soul consciousness and vigilantly turned around. Sure enough, there was a young man standing behind him. It was Wanzong. Previously in the secret realm, Kong Xinmu had met Wanzong several times. Naturally, he still remembered his appearance. Chapter 57-55. Kong Xinmu. Wanzong glanced at Kong Xinmu and spoke slowly. He was dressed as usual, and his body was still stained with some sand, and there was a faint space barrier floating around him. It was not difficult to see that he came from the space layer under the sand. Wanzong's eyes narrowed, and a glimmer of light flashed across his eyes. He understood a little about Kong Xinmu's current situation. Kong Xinmu had seen Wanzong several times. Originally, he only thought that Wanzong was a cultivator from the outer domain, but since Wanzong appeared in Lang Zhonghong's battlefield, he had a new understanding of this person. The two looked at each other. Suddenly, Wanzong moved first. At this moment, Kong Xinmu's Qi Meridian condensed power and responded. The battle between the two of them had begun. Wanzong directly released the supreme divine power of the 9th level as soon as he attacked. It was a kind of supreme divine power that Kong Xinmu had never seen, never touched, and never heard of. He could only barely sense that the other party's supreme divine power had reached the 9th level with his own soul consciousness. Moreover, when Wanzong displayed the supreme divine power of the 9th level, he also released the power of the supreme domain corresponding to the supreme divine power. In a moment, the space in which the two were located changed. When Kong Xinmu and Wanzong fought, he released the supreme power of space. Through the supreme power of space,
He found that the space in which he was located at this time was very mysterious, like the space in a secret realm.
But unlike the secret realm, the space in which he was located at this time was filled with a strange aura that did not belong to the secret realm. This kind of aura, Kong Shinmu had felt before. It was when the divine light appeared, and when Leng Zhonghong opened the contract gate, he had felt the same aura.
The world that the contract gate connected to was the other world, and the aura coming from the space was naturally the aura of the other world.
In other words, at this time, they were in the other world? Affected by the power of Wanzhong's supreme domain, Kong Shinmu's supreme power of space stagnated, unable to be released, and even felt like it was being swallowed. Kong Shinmu could only retract his supreme spatial energy. His soul consciousness was stronger than his own supreme divine power realm. His soul consciousness barely penetrated the range of Wanzhong's supreme domain power. The outside world was indeed not where he was standing just now. He had stayed in the outer realm for a period of time, so he had gained some understanding of the aura circulating in the outer realm. At this moment, the space was filled with various auras. Kong Shinmu's soul consciousness also sensed that Wanzhong's supreme domain power wasn't like Leng Zhonghong's or other cultivators, which covered half of the space. Wanzhong's supreme domain power didn't cover a large area of space.
It was more like a transfer force that could transfer cultivators who were in the supreme domain power to other spaces or even other worlds.
Wait a minute. Suddenly, Kong Shinmu sensed that something was wrong with the 7 devouring devil sealing art.
The seal of the 7 devouring demon sealing art, which he had painstakingly shut off, suddenly lit up without any warning.
2 different images were displayed on the black and white mirrors. The black mirror showed the scene that Kong Shinmu's soul consciousness had just perceived. On the other hand, the white mirror showed where he was standing just now, which was the forest in the Outland realm. Seeing the 2 images, Kong Shinmu suddenly thought that this layer of supreme domain power was like a teleportation array. One side was connected to the original world, and the other was connected to another world. Generally speaking, the creation of supreme domain power depended on the supreme divine power. In the face of such a supreme domain power, Kong Shinmu couldn't think of what kind of supreme divine power could give rise to such a supreme domain power. Bipolar mirror, is it? Not long after the 7 devouring demon sealing art was activated, he heard Wanzhong's somewhat surprised voice. Then, he launched another attack. Kong Shinmu was tired of dealing with Wanzhong's supreme divine power. Although Kong Shinmu didn't know what kind of supreme divine power Wanzhong was using, the 9th level supreme divine power that Wanzhong released was enough to suppress Kong Shinmu. Kong Shinmu's supreme divine flame had also reached the 9th level. Even so, the 9th level supreme divine flame was still defeated by Wanzhong's 9th level supreme divine power. The supreme divine flame was a new kind of supreme divine power that was refined and devoured after the power of the supreme divine fire merged with the flame of the dead. It was a brand new kind of supreme divine power, and its strength was far from what the power of the supreme divine fire could compare to. The only thing that could compare to the supreme godly flame was the supreme holy ice power. Such a level of supreme divine power was still suppressed by Wanzhong's supreme divine power, which meant that Wanzhong's supreme divine power was of a higher grade. Even the 9th level supreme divine flame could not deal with the other party's supreme divine power, so Kong Shinmu did not release other supreme divine powers. There were indeed many types of supreme divine powers that he had comprehended, but they were only at the entry level and could not fight with Wanzhong. When Kong Shinmu focused his mind, he unintentionally released the supreme soul power. This was a kind of supreme divine power that could not advance until now. From the beginning when he seized the supreme soul power until now, it had remained at the initial level. Along the way, Kong Shinmu had not been able to fully understand the supreme soul power. But he also had a general direction. The advancement of the supreme soul power was mostly like the 7 devouring demon sealing art, which needed to devour the corresponding power. The moment the supreme soul power was released, Wanzhong's expression changed, and he looked at Kong Shinmu with a dignified expression. Kong Shinmu did not know that he was controlling the supreme soul power. When he made his move, he suddenly found that his attack worked on Wanzhong. Similarly, Wanzhong was also surprised by Kong Shinmu's offensive. He was also a little surprised by the supreme divine flame released by Kong Shinmu. It seemed that in just a year, Kong Shinmu had grown to a terrifying realm. However, the 9th level supreme divine flame was still a supreme divine power that had reached the 9th level. Without its own concept, it would never be able to step into the door of the rules. The power that Kong Shinmu released just now, was it the supreme soul power? Wan Zong condensed his soul consciousness and swept towards Kong Shinmu. Kong Shinmu controlled the supreme divine flame, wanting to resist Wan Zong's offensive. The supreme soul power he released turned into an enchantment, blocking all of Wan Zong's offensive. Wan Zong's eyes narrowed, and his palm momentum had already arrived in front of Kong Shinmu's face. Kong Shinmu's palm momentum wrapped in the supreme soul power met Wan Zong's palm momentum. The moment the two sides collided, a strong explosion broke out, abruptly blowing a gap in Wan Zong's supreme domain power. Wan Zong could no longer remain calm. "Who the hell are you?" Wan Zong narrowed his eyes and asked in a deep voice. "Kong Shinmu." Kong Shinmu did not avoid the topic. Seeing Wan Zong's reaction, Kong Shinmu was shocked. He never thought that the supreme soul power could have an impact on the terrifying Wan Zong. Chapter 57-56. What Wan Zong wanted to ask was naturally not Kong Shinmu's name. This name had long been spread during the battle in the desolate ancient city, and for a period of time after that, it was often mentioned. The supreme soul power that Kong Shinmu displayed was very strange. The supreme soul power, in essence, was just a kind of supreme divine power. It had never been heard of that supreme divine power could cause damage to the supreme domain power. In fact, the supreme soul power that Kong Shinmu displayed just now had affected the range of the supreme domain. Kong Shinmu focused his mind. Like Wan Zong, Kong Shinmu was also thinking about this problem. This wasn't the first time that the unparalleled soul power was able to harm the unparalleled domain power. He had encountered it a few times before, but he did not care much. But at this time, the supreme soul power had indeed damaged Wan Zong's supreme domain power. This was a kind of domain power that even his supreme divine fire domain could not break through, but it was actually broken by the supreme heart soul power, proving that the supreme heart soul power was extraordinary. For a long time, not only had Kong Shinmu been unable to improve the supreme soul power, but he had also been unable to comprehend the supreme soul power's domain power. Even other supreme divine powers, such as the supreme dark steel power, although they could not completely comprehend the corresponding supreme domain power, they at least comprehended a part of the domain power. However, the supreme soul power was different. He could not even feel the slightest bit of the domain power. From a certain point of view, the strength of the supreme soul power had a certain connection with the cultivator's own soul consciousness. Kong Shinmu did not believe that with the strength of his soul consciousness at this time, he could not comprehend the supreme soul power's domain power. Now, he had a general direction. The supreme soul power itself and the supreme soul power's domain power were one. Wan Zong glanced at the supreme domain that was broken by the supreme soul power. With a thought, the broken area returned to its original state. The battle between the two did not determine the winner. In terms of the strength of their supreme divine powers, both of them were at the 9th level. Putting aside supreme divine power, in terms of supreme domain power, Kong Shinmu was far inferior to Wan Zong. Wan Zong's supreme domain power was as high as the supreme divine power realm, and there were also laws within it. Wan Zong realized that Kong Shinmu's supreme soul power was different from ordinary supreme divine power, so he didn't hold back. Wan Zong casually twirled his fingers, and the momentum in the domain suddenly changed. A murderous intent swept out like a gale. At the same time, Kong Shinmu unleashed his supreme power of the soul. At the same time, the 7 devouring demon sealing art suddenly lit up and began to revolve. The two different sides of the engraving gradually fused together, and the images of the two worlds gradually disappeared, turning into a strange environment. It was the space within the domain that Kong Shinmu was currently in. When this scene appeared in the engraving, the 7 devouring demon sealing art suddenly activated. Some time ago, the 7 devouring demon sealing art had devoured a lot of laws and entered the 2nd level. Although it was not stable, its power had increased. At present, the power of the 7 devouring demon sealing art that Kong Shinmu had mastered was a kind of auxiliary power. Under the effect of the 7 devouring demon sealing art, the devouring power suddenly swept out and quickly enveloped Kong Shinmu, and then spread out along with the supreme power of the soul. Wan Zong's supreme domain power had already erupted. Although Kong Shinmu's supreme power of the soul spread relatively slowly, and was even suppressed by the other party's domain power, it was forced to be unable to spread. The more condensed the domain power, the stronger the laws within it.
The devouring power under the effect of the 7 devouring demon sealing art rushed out of the scope of the supreme power of the soul and dispersed.
Wanzong noticed the spread of the devouring power, but he didn't take it seriously. How could a mere devouring power break through his domain power?
When the devouring power spread, it began to devour the laws within the domain.
The devouring speed was very fast, so fast that by the time Wanzong noticed it, more than half of it had been devoured.
Although the laws within the domain would be devoured by the devouring power, Wanzong's cultivation realm was, after all, stronger than Kong Shin Mu.
Soon, he suppressed Kong Shin Mu.
The devouring power under the effect of the 7 devouring demon sealing art could not devour the domain power after devouring the laws within.
Wanzong's power suddenly surged towards Kong Shin Mu. Kong Shin Mu had long noticed that the devouring power could not devour the domain power, so he restrained the devouring power. In the face of Wanzong's power, Kong Shin Mu could only rely on the engraving power of the 10-directional devil seal. Although the 10-directional devil seal was a heaven and earth sacred item, Kong Shin Mu was not sure whether the engraving power of the 10-directional devil seal could compete with Wanzong. Just as Kong Shin Mu activated the 10-directional devil seal, the various powers that existed in the 10-directional devil seal gradually leaked out. The supreme heart soul power, which was originally controlled by Wanzong's domain power, seemed to have sensed some kind of power and suddenly moved. At this moment, Kong Shin Mu sensed the existence of the supreme heart soul power that was different from the supreme divine power. The feeling of being filled with the domain was clearly the power of the supreme domain.
It seemed that the supreme heart soul power was also the domain power of the supreme heart soul power at the same time.
At this moment, the supreme heart soul power had already changed greatly. The moment it expanded, the entire space seemed to be dyed with a layer of blood. It quickly spread out and forced back the killing intent that existed in Wanzong's domain power. When the supreme heart soul power, which had changed, spread out, Wanzong had already controlled the power of the supreme domain in an attempt to trap it. However, no matter how hard he tried, he could not control the supreme heart soul power again. It was clear that all of Kong Shin Mu's powers were below his, and even this supreme heart soul power realm was very weak. However, at this moment, it was this inconspicuous supreme heart soul power that directly forced back the domain power and even broke the domain power. After the blood qi dispersed, the two returned to the front of the forest. The moment the domain power was broken, Wanzong restrained his own power. Although Kong Shin Mu did not restrain his own power, he also restrained his gestures. Wanzong once again looked at Kong Shin Mu and smiled meaningfully. Dragon God Clan? From the moment Kong Shin Mu activated the 10-directional devil seal, Wanzong noticed Kong Shin Mu. Kong Shin Mu had the shadow of that person. No wonder Kong Shin Mu would come to the outer territory. The left protector of the United Alliance is on good terms with the Everlasting Pavilion, especially Nangong Jia. Nangong Dujia, a member of the Nangong family who is currently a guest of the Everlasting Pavilion, is an upright person. Wanzong glanced at Kong Shin Mu and said lightly, "Why are you telling me this?" Kong Shin Mu concentrated and said in a deep voice, "It's very simple. The left protector and I don't like each other." Wanzong did not hide anything and smiled playfully. Chapter 57-57. If what Wanzong said at the beginning was that the two left protectors didn't like each other, then the meaning of the latter words was a bit unpredictable. The master of the Tianyuan Palace Master and Feng were best friends, so there was nothing wrong with what he said. However, thinking about it, whether these two were best friends or not, it had nothing to do with Kong Shin Mu. Wanzong took a deep look at Kong Shin Mu, and his figure suddenly disappeared. The moment his figure disappeared, Kong Shin Mu once again sensed the power of Wanzong's supreme realm. Although he had fought with Wanzong, until now, Kong Shin Mu still couldn't detect what kind of power Wanzong used. His supreme domain power was even more mysterious and unfathomable, difficult to distinguish. Wanzong had already left, and Kong Shin Mu didn't restrain his power. Looking at the jungle in front of him, Kong Shin Mu released the power of the Supreme Soul. For a moment, the power of the Supreme Soul suddenly swept out. When he used the power of the Supreme Soul to attack just now, it was blood red in color. At this time, Kong Shin Mu released a large area of the power of the Supreme Soul, which was red. From the outside, a red light suddenly appeared from the edge of the jungle, and then spread toward the jungle with the momentum of a gust of wind.
As Kong Shinmu guessed, there were still various kinds of space barriers floating above the jungle. However, it was worth noting that most of these space barriers floated in the space layer above the sand. They didn't spread to the sky above the jungle. In other words, the space barriers in the sealed secret realm hadn't invaded the space layer of the foreign domain for the time being. This was just a temporary discovery by Kong Shinmu. As for whether it would invade later, it was still unknown. After sensing the active range of the space barriers, Kong Shinmu avoided the space barriers and passed through the jungle. While passing through the jungle, Kong Shinmu also sensed the aura of many monsters, as well as some miscellaneous auras. At the same time, he discovered the abnormality of the power of the Supreme Soul. The use of Supreme Soul power had always been the same as soul consciousness. After the battle with Wanzong just now, Kong Shinmu realized the uniqueness of the Supreme Soul power. At this moment, the uniqueness displayed by the Supreme Soul power was even more intense. The peerless power of the soul could actually penetrate through the barriers of space. What kind of existence was a spatial barrier? To put it simply, it was equivalent to a spatial barrier. If one were to enter it, one would be trapped within it. As long as one could find another spatial barrier that connected to the outside world, one would be able to escape. On a deeper level, the spatial barrier was a kind of mystic realm. The combination of several spatial barriers was not as simple as a large-scale secret realm. Instead, the layers of space overlapped with each other. Once one entered one of them by mistake, it was possible that one would be lost forever. However, the peerless power of the soul did not seem to fear this, and directly pierced through the spatial barrier. When he realized this, Kong Shinmu couldn't help but pay more attention to the supreme power of the soul. The supreme power of the soul was the power that he had devoured. All along, he had known that the supreme power of the soul could condense a barrier. It was the first time that he had seen the supreme power of the soul act like a spatial power, passing through the spatial barrier at will. Kong Shinmu trusted the supreme power of the soul a lot, thinking that he could rely on the supreme power of the soul to smoothly avoid all the spatial barriers. However, he did not expect that he would soon be in the spatial barrier. Moreover, he personally felt that the supreme power of the soul had brought him through the layers of spatial barriers, and without any effort, he came to the other end of the forest. Kong Shinmu turned his head to look at the forest. Those spatial barriers were still there. The scarlet light was dissipating. Kong Shinmu condensed the supreme power of the soul. In the palm of his hand, the scarlet halo made him puzzled. Why did he feel that the supreme power of the soul was a little different from before? Carefully thinking about his experience during this period of time, it seemed that he did not encounter anything strange. A year ago, he went into seclusion. In a year's time, other than the supreme divine flame reaching the 9th level, his other supreme divine powers had more or less improved a little. At the same time, he also learned of a drawback of his current cultivation. Only when the supreme divine power that he comprehended reached the 9th level could he step into the door of the rules. Apart from that, there was nothing unusual. During that period of time, he also released the supreme power of the soul, and there was nothing unusual. Suddenly, Kong Shinmu thought of the scene when the sealed secret realm collapsed. At that time, there seemed to be an abnormally cold aura that flew out from the secret realm, and that aura entered the 7 devouring demon sealing art. Speaking of which, before that energy was absorbed by the 7 devouring demon sealing art, the engraving was white when it lit up. After absorbing that strange energy, the engraving was black when it lit up. Until now, the engraving was black and white, which was the so-called bipolar mirror. Could it have been affected by this energy, causing the supreme power of the soul to change? On the other side of the forest was a very prosperous city. Unlike the city that Kong Shinmu encountered Xueqi in, the entrance of this city was heavily guarded. Not only that, but the words above the city were also very eye-catching. Sun City. At this time, there were 2 queues that were as long as dragons outside the city gates of Sun City. Anyone who wanted to enter Sun City had to go through an inspection. Kong Shinmu had just arrived, so he did not know why this city was being inspected or what it was being inspected for. He was about to go forward and ask when he heard the crowd discussing something. Did you hear? The sealed secret realm collapsed. After the secret realm collapsed, more than half of the cultivators in it fell into our foreign land. I already know about this, and I even met people from the other side. Speaking of which, it's my first time meeting people from the other side.
I feel like the people from the other side are no different from us. The only difference is their cultivation base. I feel like they're very weak. That's nothing. I've seen that senior called Kong Shin Mu with my own eyes. Suddenly, a voice rang out from the crowd of people who were in a heated discussion. In an instant, everyone's attention was drawn to it, and they all looked over. Kong Shin Mu also looked over curiously. How did he suddenly become a senior? He had to say that the rumors were getting more and more ridiculous as they spread. Senior Kong Shin Mu stayed in the neighboring city, and he eventually left the city with a cultivator from the other side. The person who spoke was a middle-aged man with a mustache. As he spoke, he was still keeping people in suspense. Kong Shin Mu had never seen this person before, but he could see that the supreme divine power that this person exuded was at least at the 7th level. At this time, many cultivators who were queuing at the city gates had basically reached the 6th level of supreme divine power and above. He could not help but be surprised. There were indeed many experts in the foreign land. As the middle-aged man with the mustache spoke, he glanced at the surrounding crowd and naturally saw Kong Shin Mu. What surprised Kong Shin Mu was that this person quickly looked away. Chapter 57-58. The queue to enter the city was very long. Kong Shin Mu was hesitating whether to continue queuing when he sensed a sharp aura coming from behind him. The sharp aura was heading straight for Kong Shin Mu. Kong Shin Mu calmed himself down and circulated the supreme divine spirit flame in his meridians. Once the aura approached, he would have to block it. The cultivators who were queuing around Kong Shin Mu were also watching intently. The guards at the entrance of Yang City were also looking over. General Duan Tian, who was in charge of guarding Yang City, quickly sensed the strange aura coming towards Yang City. His figure flashed and he dashed out of the city. "Who are you? How dare you behave atrociously in Yang City?" Duan Tian bellowed. This voice carried with it a strong, unparalleled divine power that spread out in front. "General Duan, it's me." As a chuckle sounded, a person dressed in tattered clothes with disheveled hair and a dirty face swept over from the front. Kong Shin Mu could tell from the voice and aura that this person was Tang Xiaoyu. However, seeing Tang Xiaoyu's appearance, Kong Shin Mu was in disbelief. He could not imagine what Tang Xiaoyu had encountered during this period of time. "You!" Duan Tian frowned when he saw this person. Tang Xiaoyu? Tang Xiaoyu was a wanted criminal of Tianyuan Palace. Yang City was a subsidiary city of Tianyuan Palace. His appearance in Yang City at this time was undoubtedly an extremely irrational behavior. "You sure have guts." Duan Tian laughed mockingly. "Don't laugh too early. Eldest senior brother isn't in Yang City." Tang Xiaoyu shrugged casually. Tang Xiaoyu was right. Eldest senior brother Lien Yi was indeed not in Yang City. "Your attire is very unique." Duan Tian sized up Tang Xiaoyu. His eyes were filled with disdain. "Put it down. You have a share too." Tang Xiaoyu smiled faintly and then looked at Kong Shin Mu, indicating for Kong Shin Mu to leave as soon as possible. Not long ago, Tang Xiaoyu encountered people from the Union Alliance. He was no match for them and was beaten up to this extent. Thinking that it wasn't far from Yang City, he planned to use Yang City to block those people from the Allied Alliance. He had never expected to see Kong Shin Mu here. "Humph." Duan Tian sneered when he heard Tang Xiaoyu's words. Tang Xiaoyu casually patted his body and prepared to enter the city. "Don't celebrate too early, Tang Xiaoyu. Although I don't have the authority to capture you, I can inform the people of the Heavenly Origin Palace." Duan Tian sneered and casually glanced at Kong Shin Mu before looking in the direction where Tang Xiaoyu was rushing over. That cold and gloomy aura had followed Tang Xiaoyu closely, so it must have something to do with him. "Come on, let's enter the city." Tang Xiaoyu came over, not at all trying to hide his current image. He placed a hand on Jiang Shenwu's shoulder. Kong Shin Mu did not look down on Tang Xiaoyu. The two of them walked towards Sun City with their arms around each other's shoulders. "Brother Jiang, I didn't expect you to come to the outer realm. This is my territory. I'll protect you in the future." Tang Xiaoyu laughed heartily. There were several kinds of complicated supreme divine power auras on his body. These supreme divine power auras were all supreme divine powers that Kong Shin Mu had not encountered before. Some of the auras were similar to the left protector's aura.
Then I'll have to trouble you, Brother Tang.
Kong Shinmu smiled. From a certain point of view, he admired Tang Xiaoyu for living a carefree life. At the city gate of Sun City,
before the two of them could enter, they were stopped by a long sword that descended from the sky. The blade of the sword flashed with a cold, murderous intent, and the body of the sword flickered with scarlet light. From the sword, it could be seen that the owner of the sword must have experienced countless killings to be able to cultivate the sword to such a level.
Soul-slaying sword. Tang Xiaoyu recognized the sword at a glance. You enter the city first. Then, he slapped at Kong Shinmu and pushed Kong Shinmu into the city gate.
Just at this moment, a black shadow attacked from the horizon, and a young man in a black robe revealed his figure immediately after. He lifted the soul-slaying sword and stared at Tang Xiaoyu coldly.
Tang Xiaoyu, today is the day you die.
As soon as the young man finished speaking, he moved and stabbed at Tang Xiaoyu with the soul-slaying sword in his hand.
Although Tang Xiaoyu looked like he was in a mess, he was agile and had a ghostly movement technique. The young man could not capture Tang Xiaoyu's movements immediately. Duan Tian came to Sun City after dealing with the other troubles.
He Meng, how dare you? Duan Tian glared at the young man in a black robe coldly and shouted.
The young man ignored him and kept stabbing at Tang Xiaoyu with the soul-slaying sword. The Sun City gate was in a mess because of He Meng's sudden attack. Hurry up! Duan Tian urged the guards guarding Yang City to hurry up. Kong Shinmu looked at He Meng's aura and sensed the aura that Tang Xiaoyu released. Soon, Kong Shinmu noticed something shocking. He had thought that He Meng's aura was similar to the left protector's aura. Now, it seemed like He Meng's aura was completely different from the left protector's. He Meng had the Union Alliance's badge on his waist, proving that he was a member of the Union Alliance. Tang Xiaoyu's aura was similar to the left protector's. This could only mean that Tang Xiaoyu had fought with the left protector before. Judging from He Meng's aggressive and overbearing manner, Tang Xiaoyu must have severely injured the left protector. Duan Tian tried to reason with He Meng, but He Meng did not listen and attacked even more ruthlessly. Duan Tian, I've already reported this to the other members of the Union Alliance. You, Sun City, and even Heaven Yuan Palace won't be able to escape, let alone Tang Xiaoyu. He Meng grinned hideously. Is the Union Alliance going to war with Heaven Yuan Palace? Duan Tian asked in a deep voice as he realized the seriousness of the matter. General Duan Tian, is your brain rusty? It's clearly your Heaven Yuan Palace that wants to go to war with the Union Alliance, right?
He Meng looked as if he had heard something unbelievable.
Duan Tian pursed his lips, guessing that Tang Xiaoyu must have gotten into some trouble. You still don't know what Tang Xiaoyu did? He Meng spoke again when he saw Duan Tian's reaction. Duan Tian's face was filled with confusion. When Kong Shinmu saw He Meng's reaction, he felt that his guess was close to the truth. Hey, He Meng, what I do doesn't seem to have anything to do with Heaven Yuan Palace, right? Everyone in the outer region doesn't know that I'm wanted by Heaven Yuan Palace. Tang Xiaoyu shrugged disapprovingly. Are you in such a hurry to cut ties with Heaven Yuan Palace? Did you regret it when you killed him? Tang Xiaoyu from Tang Village. He Meng's expression was somewhat crazed. He did not want to waste any more words.
With a wave of his hand, the soul-exterminating sword emitted a powerful sword aura that shot towards Tang Xiaoyu.
You flatter me. Tang Xiaoyu smiled mischievously, then his figure disappeared from the spot. As his figure disappeared, he did not forget to send a voice transmission to Kong Shinmu, telling Kong Shinmu to stay in Yang City as much as possible. Yang City was a subsidiary city of Heaven Yuan Palace. If he stayed in Yang City and the Union Alliance came looking for trouble, at least the people from Heaven Yuan Palace would be there. Tang Xiaoyu from Tang Village? This was the first time Kong Shinmu had heard of such a title. He smiled helplessly, then strode out of Yang City's city gate. When Duan Tian saw Kong Shinmu's actions, he could not help but frown. Just now, Tang Xiaoyu had tried his best to send this person into Yang City, but now he had left the city? He really could not understand what was going on. Tang Xiaoyu, let's see where you can run to today. When Tang Xiaoyu's figure disappeared, He Meng's figure turned, and the soul-exterminating sword stabbed to the side. Chapter 57-59. This idiot.
Just as Duan Tian was about to chase after him, he saw that Kong Shinmu had already moved. It was only now that Duan Tian realized Kong Shinmu's terrifying strength. After mastering the supreme power of space, Kong Shinmu could see through Tang Xiaoyu's 10,000 Elephants origin superposition technique and quickly found traces of his movements. Kong Shinmu found Tang Xiaoyu's traces before He Meng and blocked He Meng's palm attack for Tang Xiaoyu. "Who are you?" He Meng stopped and asked coldly. He Meng sized up Kong Shinmu, but he couldn't figure out Kong Shinmu's cultivation base. However, He Meng was fearless. There were many cultivators who were good at hiding their cultivation base in the outer realm. Generally speaking, supreme cultivators who had reached the 9th level of supreme divine power could hide their own strength at will. Anyone who stopped him from capturing Tang Xiaoyu was an enemy, no matter who they were. As soon as He Meng finished speaking, he released a supreme martial technique and charged straight at Kong Shinmu. Kong Shinmu didn't plan to stand by and do nothing just because He Meng was a member of the United Alliance. Not to mention his friendship with Tang Xiaoyu, from a certain point of view, he would become an enemy of the United Alliance sooner or later. He Meng repeatedly tried to kill Tang Xiaoyu, who was seriously injured. Once Kong Shinmu attacked, he didn't plan to hold back. He released all of his 9th stage supreme divine spirit flames, forcefully blocking He Meng's attack and pushing it back towards He Meng. Tang Xiaoyu originally planned to use the ingenuity of the 10,000 Elephants origin superposition technique to escape with He Meng and Zhou Xian. However, he didn't expect that he underestimated He Meng's strength. He Meng wasn't good at spatial spells. The supreme divine power he cultivated was just like his name, a strength-type supreme divine power. It was this kind of supreme divine power that could pierce through space. Tang Xiaoyu couldn't successfully cast the 10,000 Elephants origin superposition technique. In his current state, if he forced it, it was very likely to cause unbearable consequences. In the face of this crisis, Kong Shinmu stood up. Kong Shinmu's move was beyond Tang Xiaoyu's expectations. The United Alliance was not like the Limitless Pavilion. If they offended the United Alliance, the consequences would be unimaginable. Kong Shinmu was a smart man. He should know the pros and cons of this. "Brother Jiang." Tang Xiaoyu appeared in front of Kong Shinmu, intending to stop Kong Shinmu's next wave of attacks. "It's too late," Kong Shinmu said lightly. With that, he withdrew his hand gesture. Fortunately, he stopped in time. Tang Xiaoyu heaved a sigh of relief. In the next moment, Tang Xiaoyu was stunned. He Meng, who was knocked out by Kong Shinmu, was no longer breathing. The supreme divine power around his body had completely leaked out, and his vitality had completely disappeared. Tang Xiaoyu glanced at He Meng, then at Kong Shinmu. He was at a loss for words, and his emotions were complicated. The fact that Kong Shinmu could kill He Meng with ease meant that his strength had improved a lot during this period. However, the person who was killed by Kong Shinmu was He Meng. He was a member of the Union Alliance. The Union Alliance had always been vengeful. This was not a good thing. Even if He Meng was from the Everlasting Pavilion, it would not be a big problem. "Brother Jiang, over here." Tang Xiaoyu pointed at Yang City in a hurry. It was not an exaggeration to say that in the entire outer region, the only people who could help Kong Shinmu were the Heavenly Origin Palace and the 10 people. Kong Shinmu had planned to go to the Heavenly Origin Palace, but now that he had provoked the people of the Union Alliance, he could not help but worry. Duan Tian's attention was focused on Kong Shinmu. The scene that had just happened replayed in his mind, and he still could not come back to his senses. From the moment he saw Kong Shinmu, Duan Tian could not clearly see Kong Shinmu's cultivation level. He could roughly guess that Kong Shinmu was not someone to be trifled with. However, he did not expect that he could kill He Meng in an instant. Who did not know He Meng's strength? Who on earth was Kong Shinmu? When did such a powerhouse appear in the outer region? Suddenly, Duan Tian thought of the sealed secret realm. Some time ago, because of the collapse of the sealed secret realm, many cultivators from the secret realm came to the outer region. For now, most of the cultivators who came from the sealed arcane realm came from the other world. In the outer region, the other realm was not an unfamiliar world. It was related to the earliest history of the outer region. Duan Tian saw that Kong Shinmu, whether it was his cultivation level or his bearing, was very similar to a member of a certain clan in the other realm. He was sure that Kong Shinmu was a person from the other realm. Just now,
Kong Shinmu had killed someone from the United Alliance. The Heaven Origin Palace had always been at odds with the United Alliance, so they could be considered allies. "My dear friend, please come in." Duan Tian took the initiative to invite Kong Shinmu in. Kong Shinmu originally wanted to enter the city, but he hesitated because of the United Alliance. "Let's go. I'll show you the customs of the Heaven Origin Palace." Tang Xiaoyu laughed heartily. Kong Shinmu was not a pretentious person. Through Tang Xiaoyu, he had a general understanding of the relationship between the United Alliance and the Heaven Origin Palace, so he did not refuse and entered Sun City. The turmoil outside Sun City was finally over. Patrolling troops could often be seen in Sun City. Moreover, members of the United Alliance were prohibited from entering Sun City. The reason they had to be checked when entering the city was to resist the United Alliance. Not long before the sealed mystic realm collapsed, the United Alliance and the Heaven Origin Palace had a conflict. At that time, the Heaven Origin Palace disciples were out on a mission and encountered members of the United Alliance. The United Alliance people maliciously stirred up trouble, and a fight broke out between the two sides. The United Alliance people used their geographical advantage and called for a few deacon elders. As a result of the fight, many Heaven Origin Palace disciples were seriously injured. One person's cultivation base was crippled, and he would never be able to comprehend supreme divine power for the rest of his life. Another 2 people died. After this incident, the Heaven Origin Palace did not treat the United Alliance with the slightest courtesy. The relationship between the two sides went from being on opposite sides to being completely hostile. Sun City was not the only city affiliated to the Heaven Origin Palace, but the city lords of the other cities actually sided with the United Alliance after this incident. Heaven Origin Palace only found out that the city lords of those cities had secretly joined the United Alliance. In the end, Sun City was the only one left of the several affiliated cities. However, Sun City was not the only city that banned the people of the United Alliance. There was also a city thousands of miles away that followed Sun City and also banned the United Alliance. It was Upper Prefecture City. Upper Prefecture City was a name that had been changed in the past 100 years. The city lord was Xian Che. Xian Che had left to travel a long time ago and had yet to return. However, the rules of Upper Prefecture City were set according to Sun City. According to the general who guarded the city, the ban on the United Alliance was personally imposed by the city lord. "Tang Xiaoyu, how dare you come to Sun City?" Duan Tian glanced at Tang Xiaoyu and raised his eyebrows. "Also, how did you provoke that he Meng?" First of all, it was the left protector who provoked the Heaven Origin Palace disciple first. "That's why I attacked." Tang Xiaoyu, who was always smiling, looked terrifyingly gloomy when he mentioned this incident. "Huh." Duan Tian glanced at Tang Xiaoyu's expression and asked. "Wan Gunjiu?" Tang Xiaoyu said in annoyance. Wan Gunjiu's cultivation base had been crippled previously. Now that he had finally recovered and his cultivation base was gradually recovering, he still could not comprehend supreme divine power. His soul, consciousness, and sea of consciousness were destroyed. Not only could he not comprehend the supreme divine power that he had previously mastered, he could not comprehend new supreme divine powers in the future either. The left protector had no intention of showing mercy to such a cripple. Duan Tian knew about Wan Gunjiu's situation and understood why Tang Xiaoyu would do that. Tang Xiaoyu was not the only one. Anyone else would have done the same. The left protector had only himself to blame for ending up in such a state. Forget it, let's not talk about this anymore. Tang Xiaoyu did not want the atmosphere to be too heavy. "I've saved him. His life is not in danger." Kong Shinmu seemed to have an impression of Wan Gunjiu when he heard them talking about him. He seemed to have met this person when he went out to train in the past. However, it had been too long and he could not remember it clearly. Yang City was very strict. If anyone was found to have entered the city without reporting, they would be punished. General Duan Tian had already announced that no one from the United Alliance or anyone related to the United Alliance would be allowed to enter Sun City. Chapter 5760. What happened outside Yang City had already spread to Tianyuan Palace. The name Kong Shinmu was no stranger to Tianyuan Palace. Everyone in Tianyuan Palace knew that the wanted man, Tang Xiaoyu, was close to Kong Shinmu.
In addition, Kong Shinmu's deeds in the mystic realm had spread, causing Kong Shinmu's name to spread in Tianyuan Palace. Kong Shinmu's origins had become a hot topic of discussion. Of course, that was all there was to it. It wasn't just the Heaven Yuan Palace. Jiang Shenwu's name had become a hot topic for the other sects in the outer domain, such as the Shao Yun sect, the Qing sect, and even the Everlasting Pavilion. However, for Everlasting Pavilion, the atmosphere in the entire sect was somewhat heavy upon hearing the name Kong Shinmu. No one in Everlasting Pavilion had expected that only a few people who had gone to the sealed mystic realm to search for the star map lock would return. The Pavilion Master's daughter did not return, the outstanding disciple Hai Fan did not return, and Everlasting Pavilion's eldest senior brother Dan Yuanfei did not return. Many elders and disciples remained in the sealed mystic realm forever. The culprit behind this tragedy was Kong Shinmu. The place where Kong Shinmu first appeared was at the foot of Everlasting Pavilion's mountain gate. Nangong Yi had also met Kong Shinmu, but the disciples who had gone to Everlasting Pavilion had not returned, so he did not know the details. As the disciples who had gone out to train returned one after another, all the evil deeds that Jiang Shenwu had done were all exposed. Nangong Yi's first reaction when he heard this was disbelief. He had seen Kong Shinmu before, and judging from his appearance, he was not a heinous villain. Why would he do such a thing? Regardless of what Nangong Yi thought, Everlasting Pavilion quickly issued a kill order. Summon all the talented people in the outer realms to hunt down Jiang Shenwu. Regardless of whether he was dead or alive, if he was alive, they wanted to see him. If he was dead, they wanted to see his corpse. As long as Jiang Shenwu was brought to the Everlasting Pavilion, it would be fine. Other than the currency of the outer realm, there was also a large amount of cultivation techniques and elixirs of various attributes that were useful for cultivation. Those who provided clues about Kong Shinmu's whereabouts would also receive a large number of cultivation technique manuals. Even the disciples of the Everlasting Pavilion were envious of these rewards. When the bounty was announced, a large number of disciples of the Everlasting Pavilion left the mountain gate with their magical treasures. They were determined to capture Kong Shinmu. The person Kong Shinmu killed was the youngest daughter of the Everlasting Pavilion's Pavilion Master. He did not take the Everlasting Pavilion's Pavilion Master seriously at all. No one knew how Kong Shinmu could compete with the Wuji Pavilion, but the Pavilion Master swore that he would make Kong Shinmu pay the price. The Everlasting Pavilion was one of the members of the United Alliance. After this incident, the United Alliance was prepared to intervene. Previously, the news that Kong Shinmu was in Yang City had also been spread to the Wuji Pavilion. Yang City was a subsidiary city of the Heaven Origin Palace. Kong Shinmu's intention was obvious. He wanted to rely on the Heaven Origin Palace. Or perhaps, he was a member of the Heaven Origin Palace. The Everlasting Pavilion had always been unhappy with the Heaven Origin Palace. This time, it was a good opportunity to teach the Heaven Origin Palace a lesson. Of all times, the news came. The Heaven Origin Palace's Tang Xiaoyu killed the United Alliance's left protector. He Meng, who went to seek justice for the left protector, was killed by Kong Shinmu at the city gate of Yang City. This news directly expanded the conflict between the Heaven Origin Palace and the Everlasting Pavilion, and even the United Alliance. The United Alliance had already sent the news to the base and was waiting for the orders from the higher-ups. The Everlasting Pavilion in the Outer Realm had already sent people over. Yang City. Duan Tian had received news from the upper state city that the members of the Outer Realm's United Alliance were ready to go to war and had already deployed their troops. As the great general of Yang City, Duan Tian was obliged to lead the troops to defend the city. Duan Tian, I seem to have implicated you this time. Tang Xiaoyu had a rare serious look on his face. His tone was not like before, but very solemn. You are the person the palace master ordered to capture. Even if you have committed a heinous crime, you are still a member of the Heaven Origin Palace. Duan Tian punched Tang Xiaoyu and left in a hurry. It was not only Duan Tian who was not used to Tang Xiaoyu being like this, but Kong Shinmu was also not used to it. Ever since he knew Tang Xiaoyu, he had never seen this guy pass by. He suddenly became serious and looked a little strange. Duan Tian, if you die, I will definitely go to your grave to burn incense. Tang Xiaoyu looked at Duan Tian's back and suddenly shouted, I have to thank you. Duan Tian staggered. Tang Xiaoyu knew about the Everlasting Pavilion situation. He took the risk to return to the Heaven Origin Palace, looking for traces of Kong Shinmu along the way. He directly led him to the Heaven Origin Palace. Brother Jiang, do you know about the bipolar mirror? Suddenly, Tang Xiaoyu said in a low voice. Kong Shinmu's expression froze. Could it be that Tang Xiaoyu was also from the other world? He did have the bipolar mirror, but he could not open the passage to the other world. There must be some conditions. The bipolar mirror can open the door to the other world. If you have this thing, you can directly leave the outer region. Tang Xiaoyu said quickly. Right, it can be used together with the Star Atlas Lock. As he spoke, Tang Xiaoyu slapped his forehead. I almost forgot. The Star Atlas Lock can not only store other people, but also the owner. Because the Star Atlas Lock itself is a spatial Dharma artifact that can store life. Tang Xiaoyu's words could be considered to have enlightened Kong Shinmu. Kong Shinmu also understood what he meant. But the current situation was far from that serious. Don't worry. Kong Shinmu patted Tang Xiaoyu's shoulder. I just came to ask something. I will leave the Heaven Origin Palace very soon. Brother Jiang, you are wrong. Tang Xiaoyu's expression was solemn. The United Alliance has been targeting the Heaven Origin Palace for a long time. This time, they just found a so-called excuse. The four sects are not as harmonious as the rumors say. They are all competitors. There is no real friendship. Tang Xiaoyu hesitated for a moment. Then, as if he had made up his mind, he slowly said. If necessary, you can find the Tang Village's martial artist, Old Shen. Tang Village's Old Shen? Compared to the Tang Village's Old Shen, Kong Shinmu was more concerned about what Tang Xiaoyu had said. In fact, not only the sects, but even the cultivators were also in a relationship of competition. Since it was a relationship of competition, then there would be no real friendship. But just now, Tang Xiaoyu had clearly mentioned the Tang Village's Old Shen. He would remember this friendship. This is a keepsake. Tang Xiaoyu searched in his pocket and took out a green crescent jade pendant. The jade pendant was engraved with the word, Tang. Kong Shinmu did not refuse and took the jade pendant. The two of you. At this moment, a young man in a grey robe walked over quickly. He restrained his aura and strode in front of Kong Shinmu and Tang Xiaoyu. This person was a disciple of the Heaven Origin Palace, Lian Ju, who was related to Lian Yi by blood. Lian Ju naturally saw Tang Xiaoyu and couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Tang Xiaoyu, how dare you appear here? Why wouldn't I dare? Tang Xiaoyu curled his lips. What are you doing here? I am under the orders of the Palace Master to invite you to the Heaven Origin Palace. Lian Ju's eyes turned and fell on Kong Shinmu. He said politely. Young Master, the Palace Master invites you. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.